Looks like we're live. I keep forgetting there's two go live buttons. So you got to push one and push another one. I was sitting here waiting for it and nothing happening. How's everybody doing tonight? Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Let's see, I gotta get this link to Clint. He hadn't replied to me. I sent him a message a minute ago, or sent him on Friday and sent him one day. He hadn't gotten back with me. Hopefully everything's doing all right with him. Let me send him, well, shit, let me send him the right link. Just one moment. There we go. There he is. Damn it, man, you ain't answering my damn text. You didn't get a message from me. I just sent you another one. You check your Facebook Messenger message here. Same one I send you the links on, bro. I hope you got your truck done. What's wrong with it? All right, let me see here. Let me get this right link here. Now, I sent you the right one. I got to get the right one to share. All right, let me get these out there. While Clint tells everybody what's wrong with his truck. There's them two YouTube notifications. Hopefully they'll go back to like they did last Saturday and let me share them all. What's going on, JJ? Good to see you, brother. What's the butter for? Well, some people use butter to help keep the foaming down. What's going on, GW? Good to see you back. See, a lot of people put butter or vegetable oil on top, and what it is, it forms a little layer of oil on top of the water, kind of like the same thing. I guess people when you're boiling eggs to keep it from foaming up, you can do anytime you're boiling pasta or anything like that. You put a little butter in it or vegetable oil, and it coats the surface of the water, and it makes it a little more prone to or less prone to foaming up on you. I doubt you'd use enough to affect the taste of it. You know, it's just going to be just a little thin layer on the top, just enough to help break the surface tension. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize it. You know, in our mashes, we got lactobacillus, which is kind of a yogurt base, a probiotic yogurt, kind of a lactic acid, not an acidophilus, but similar and creamy. So yeah, a little butter won't hurt. What's going on, Seashine? What's up, Thumpkick? Welcome back, old Steve. Good to see everybody. All right, let me get these links shared. It depends on the still size. You know, if you had a big 50 or 100 gallon, I'd say it probably wouldn't be too much at all. But you know, if you're running a 10 or a 15, it might be a little bit much, but you know, a little buttered corn ain't gonna hurt nothing, right? If it's corn liquor, I doubt it would hurt. If it were a brandy, it probably wouldn't be as good. But the best tasting mash would have to be, well, it was a must, is my wines. Probably some beers that people make where it's just too damn good to even run. You got nutrients in there? How long has it been, JJ? All right, let me get these damn links here. I won't get into answering questions, and I'll forget all about the links like I did last week. It'll be 20 minutes into the show, and I'm like, wait a minute, I forgot to share the damn links. Yeah, I've done that. I have certainly done that. More than once. So hopefully they'll let me share them all right off the bat so I don't have to fool with it an hour later. I mean, one way or the other, I'm going to share them, so just let me do it and be done with it. And everybody that wants to watch it can and tune in at the early. I don't know why Facebook has to be funny about things, but I know they got a lot of bots out there that are posting a lot of stuff, just thousands and thousands of posts to every group, and whether it's related or not, and that bogs their systems down, and I can understand that. But a human posting the same posts that they do twice a week for years, I think they could use a little AI to say, hey, this is a guy posting the same thing he does every. Hey, how's it going, brother? Good to see y'all in here. Hell yeah, good to see you, bro. We can chat in just a minute. No problem at all, brother. That's what we're here for. So anytime anybody's got any questions, you're free to send me messages or post it in the groups, and either in the DIY Shine a Steel building or in the militia page or in the Rock Gut group. We'll get her answered. Lots of knowledgeable people in all those groups that can help out too, like Clint does here. He's invaluable help. So hope everybody's having a good weekend. There's Mike. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. Yeah, we had some posts earlier today, and kind of gave them a short, abbreviated answers, and tell them come on, join the podcast and bring your questions in here, and we can deal with them in here. It's a lot better than sitting typing a lot. I spend a lot of time, on these podcasts every week. Clint and I both do, but we both spend a lot of time answering messages that people send, and people don't realize it though. When you have to formulate an answer and you have to type, and like I'm doing it on the phone usually, and so is Clint, it takes a while. So love the questions though. We'll try to help anytime we can, but if we don't get back to you immediately, don't get mad. We'll get back to you as soon as possible, because I don't always check my phone, and my phone doesn't always beep and give me a notification that I've got a message. So I may not get right back to you, but I will try my best to get back to you. And if I don't, after a day or so, just send me a little question mark, and maybe it'll pop up for me. Sometimes it just don't pop up at all. People, with Ann, I've sent her messages before, and she sends me some messages, and I didn't reply to my message. She'll show me her phone. It never popped up. Never even registered. Looks to me like they might let people have a little bit more sharing on the weekends than they do during the week. Maybe it's the volume. But that's nice. I wish it was this way every time, so I could just get them all out there, get them done, and I can focus on what, chatting with you all and answering questions and talking about daggone it just as soon as I say that. Not too bad, though. About 6 more, so we'll have to come back to those. Now let's see if I can swap this over here. Swap that there. All right, good deal. I'm learning. See, I was able to do split screen. I always say I should split that screen. That way I can kind of pay attention to what y'all got going on and share those links. How long will access? It'll last forever. Put it in a jar. Try to put it in glass. Don't put it in plastic. It's pretty acidic. But yeah, if you put it in a jar, and it'll last for a long, long time. It's basically the acidity that you're looking for in the back set. a lot of people, in Drunder, same thing with your rum. I got a question earlier talking about, acid, and they were talking about how their mash had gone acidic, and it was a rum, and it had a little bit of a vinegar smell to it, and a vinegar is basically acetic acid, and acetic acid is a natural byproduct of fermentations, and especially higher sugar fermentation. So, like rum, for example. So, not necessarily a bad thing, because that acetic acid esterifies with the ethanol and some of the oils in there, and produces ethyl acetate, so acetyl acetate, and that ends up creating some fruity flavors. It also can, if depending on the amounts of it, come across as a nail polish. A lot of times we talk about nail polish and stuff. So it's just a specific part of your heads that'll have that. And if you allow it to age over time, when we talk about how if we're doing something for like a white dog, we want to make really sharp cuts, but if it's something that we're going to age over a long period of time, cheatening to a little bit to each side, getting a little bit of those low heads and a little bit of those high tails to get some of those esters in there, and get some of the oil in there to work with the ethanol to esterify into some interesting flavors over time. So, but that's the same process, and it's not always bad. It's not always going to turn to vinegar, but acetic acid will have a slight vinegar taste. That doesn't mean that your mash is ruined, though. So what was wrong with it? We all run a little rough. Cool. So it's not a timing thing. You think it's more of a carburation, is it? Yeah, I don't think your back set's going to go bad. Keep it in a jar and it'll last. Anyway, getting back to that, so adding that ester and the acids from that back set into fermentation increases that ester, and you get higher esters, and therefore you can get more flavor, pull more flavor that way. And starting with a low pH, we know, we talk about during our conversions, you want to start out at 5.3. A lot of people wait until they pitch their yeast to pH down and all. It's best to start out with that lower pH, get it to around 5.3 before we do our conversions, because it actually helps to convert in doing those conversions with the enzymes or with your malts. Awesome. All right, let me see what you were referring to up here, Ronnie. I might have missed something there. But then I'd say some of my best tasting mashes were probably wine musts. But I'd say there's a lot of beer makers in here that say, some of their grain mashes were just so good they just left it as a beer, because that's basically what beer is. It's minus the hops. It's just a grain mash, right? Yeah, yeah. Yes, I've done banana rum. I've done quite a bit of banana rum, and it's awesome. But I will say, leave lots and lots of headspace in your fermenter for banana fermentations, because it produces a really, really large cap, a huge cap. You'll be shocked. I mean, most people the first time, if they don't have somebody to tell them, it ends up on the floor, and it's a mess. A banana cap is a slimy mess to get on your floors. I'm surprised I don't hear ants in yeah. But yeah, it's messy, and if you use an airlock and seal it, it can end up on your ceiling as well. It can blow that airlock right out, man. It gets a huge cap. So leave plenty of extra space, triple what you normally would leave. But yeah, banana rums are great. And you don't have to use, molasses. You can use brown sugar, if you don't want it to have as strong a taste. So you can adjust it that way. Or you can use molasses if you like that flavor. But yeah, bananas make good stuff. It's a grunge, I got a real grungy. I didn't get like banana flavor, it wasn't a real strong banana flavor. With the rum, it was just a good, dark, grungy rum with I liked it. And but it was started out in the middle and the end. It didn't have a lot of notes from the front to the end. It was pretty much just the same all the way through, and that's one thing I didn't like about it. So I used it in conjunction with root beer and used that as a base for a root beer rum. And man, it's good. It really, that darkness coupled with that root beer, it works really well together. Worked really well together. Yeah, ferments can take long, especially when it's cooler. Every fall, winter, early spring, everybody encounters it, and they're not used to it. They see it in the spring, summer, and fall when it's warmer, and everything goes pretty quickly, and then all of a sudden temperatures start dropping a little bit. And you don't notice it as much, um, but the drop in temperature can definitely slow things down a lot. And also fruit fermentations, making brandies is definitely going to take a lot longer than like a grain. But for a sugar wash to take a little bit longer, it's definitely lower temperatures, and just is what it is, like I said. Yep. And you're picking up booze, firewood, and left-handed cigarette recreational legal. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Should be legal everywhere. I just don't understand, the states. I understand every state should have certain rules and stuff, but when it comes to things like that and alcohol, I think everybody should be able to have the same law nationwide. You know, be nice. But there's a lot of difference in a lot of different states. One, condones something, another state, you get 10 years for doing the same damn thing. It's crazy. I reckon it's running rough, kind of like we are. Yeah, it's one I don't recommend airlocking, especially first time or two. Yeah, just put a towel over it because man, it gets big caps, and it probably be a good idea if you put it in a bathtub or something when you ferment it because it might be a little bit easier to clean that first time because the caps double or triple or maybe quadruple anything you've ever seen before. It gets crazy. And doing it in your bathtub ain't a bad idea. Just go a couple weeks without taking a bath, you'll be all right. Oh, red yeast. Well, that with the temperatures, it likes a little warmer temperatures too. So, but that's all right. There's nothing wrong with using a little bread yeast in sugar wash. It's a little different flavor. It gives you a different flavor than other yeast. That's all it is. It's just in time and flavor. You definitely don't want to push it beyond the 12-14% limits, but if as long as you stay within those limits, it's not going to stress it, and it just might take a little longer. You don't want to stress it. What's going on, O'Shane? Good to see you, brother. how things been going, brother? Oh yeah, I saw a keg still. That's awesome, man. I know you're excited. Get giddy like a kid during Christmas. I know. I know the feeling. Hadn't had it in a long time, but I know. Yeah, I don't toss it. Save it for cleaning. You can clean countertops with it, kill grass with it, start your charcoal on fire, wipe your countertops down. Acetic acid. Oh, that perked his ears right up, didn't it? Now, somebody was talking about the rum wash that had the slight vinegar over it, and just commenting to him that when that happens, to expect it to happen, acetic acid is a typical organic acid byproduct of fermentation, especially in higher attenuation washes when a lot of sugars and things are used. So, expect it. It's not ruined. A lot of people, oh, it smells like vinegar. It's like wine. It's ruined. No, just acetic acid. It'll be fine. Now, if it gets real heavy, it could be a problem, but that's why we have those oyster shells, right? That's good to hear, brother. Yeah. Yeah, and using it, mentioning acetic acid, introducing, acid from the very get go not only helps in your conversion, it helps in the, creation of some of these acids and the creation of these acids are what give you a lot of flavor notes later when we talk about esterification, how these organic acids, work with alcohol and the oils in the mash to create flavors, and especially in aged products. So, yeah, the back set's used to adjust pH and help in the conversion and to make it sour. As pH drops, things tend to sour. And yeah, they were talking about the lady that made the first sour mash ever. I can't remember her name. My memory does not serve me well, but lady here in Kentucky that originated the sour mash and how she would use the back set, and they called it slop back then, but it was basically backings, his back set, and you would add that with your corn at first, and that I guess they were using some acidity to help get some of the starches out of the corn, Miss Darling. Yeah, that's it. Yep, yep. Helps keep your bacteria at bay, and probably helps that lacto from kind of getting a foothold early on too. We've somebody had a big problem with their fermentation stuck, and man, he had some of the thickest lacto top I've seen, and some of it was calm yeast, but he had a heavy lacto infection, and I'd say that's what's kind of slowing things down. You get a lacto infection like that early on, lacto consumes yeast, and it can also uh, process alcohol, metabolize alcohol. So it's not something that you want early on because it doesn't allow your yeast to get a foothold. Or even if some does come over, running it a second time will take care of it. Even if just get a touch over and it has a touch of that flavor, you can run it again. And people don't realize a lot of times people run liquor 2 or 3 times, right? To get it lighter. You know, like the Irish generally run pot still once to get that heavier body. I like running once to get a heavier body. But also, sometimes I'll run 2, 3, 4 times, you know, especially because I can add directly back and reprocess it and keep going without ever really having to stop. I'll turn the fire off, reprocess it, add it, and then fire's back on. Temperature takes 10 minutes to heat up, and I'm back at it, you know. So it's pretty easy. Yeah, yeah, and it's there's a difference, you know. There's sour mash from your back set, um, and vinegar. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes a cap like no tomorrow, man. It's a huge cap. Yeah, I remember you talking about the banana. I love that banana rum, man. It's really good, really good rum. I'm just waiting on bananas to go on sale. We had strawberries on sale, $1 a pound. Not bad, but I got too much other things to do. I got to focus on grain. I got a bunch of wine in there and brandy. I need to focus on grain, so I can't start making more projects like that. Phew, my airlock got stopped. Yeah, it will, man. Yeah, you gotta watch it, man. I've cleaned a ceiling or two when things like that happen, and I tell you that banana was one of them, and it's a messy mess. It is bad. It's it's bad. You don't want to. Best just put the lid on loose on those and just let them, because they go fairly quickly anyway. We making that moonshine. That's what we talking about, brother. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's something everybody should try though. It makes good liquor, but it's just, you know, if you want it real grungy, you know, use that molasses with it and a good rum yeast. If you want it kind of light, use a brown sugar. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about the flavor of it. You don't care. That's why I used that cheap yeast and didn't care about attenuation. Yep, I got you, brother. Yes, that's right. As far as moonshine goes, it can be gin, vodka, rum, tequila, whiskey, bourbon, you know, whatever, absinthe, ouzo, whatever that's not taxed that you make at home and you don't pay tax on. So that's just kind of a catch-all phrase. You know, for some people it means corn liquor made out in the woods, but for most of us it just means an untaxed spirit. Most of us don't go out in the woods and hide anymore. We can hide in our kitchens and on our decks out back, our storage buildings, little shine shacks. Doing a banana and Demerara. Okay. Yeah, I use that Zolka sugar a lot too. I like that Zolka sugar, and it's similar to the Demerara. The Demerara is a little darker. You know, it's good stuff. Yeah, it's definitely different than that corn and rye for sure. Yep, but I like using a little rum yeast with it. Or if you don't have any rum yeast, you want to use some EC 1118 or 80 or something like that. Add a little bit of that liquid glucose to help some of those unfermentables. If you do use the brown sugar or the molasses, helps out a little bit. If you want it to finish dry, Yeah, it is, man. It's really good. Brown sugar, that dark brown sugar and banana. Yeah, man, it makes really good rum. Yep, that definitely helps. Definitely helps. Yeah, it's hard to put a drain in one of those, man. You can put that bypass on, you can take it down and dump it out and add some more infusion to it or swap them out if you're worried about them cracking. But yeah, having that bypass certainly helps. That works. 1.120. Man, that's definitely beyond what that bread yeast is going to be able to do. I don't know. How many percent is that? 1.120. That's crazy, man. Let me see what. That is a 15.7 to 16.3, right around 16. So that's going to max out the bread yeast and then some. But it doesn't matter, like you said. Really busy, huh? Lurking. We got a lot of lurkers. That's all right. Yeah, man, life happens, brother. Sometimes you just got to take care of business and put those hobbies on the back burner. But that means you can have some old brandy mash going and sitting there waiting. There's some corn fermentation. Just get it fermenting and it'll wait till you're ready for it. That's the beauty of it. As long as it's sitting in there under an airlock or covered well, you just take your time. Yeah, old Philbit hooked you up, huh? Yeah, I saw it set up. Looks good, man. It's good. It is real good. Yes, sir. They will. They cover your ass when you need it. And especially like rum washes or sugar washes and anything that's prone to pH crash pretty quickly. With your grains during the summer, not going to be that critical. A tequila wash during the summer with high temperatures that go really fast and, you know, maybe, probably going to be a little bit helpful in that. But like a good grain mash, it's generally pretty smooth and goes smoothly and doesn't crash a lot. But anything with higher sugars and syrups, it's definitely going to definitely help. Yeah, yeah. It's once your pH crashed, it's not good for bringing up pH. That's not what it's for at all. I mean, it will, but you got to give it a long time. It's just helps buffer it. So as acidity, and if you don't add enough, it'll help buffer it, but the acidity can still get overwhelming. So adding enough, adding too much, I don't know if that's possible. But you can definitely not add enough. A couple handfuls. You know, for every 5 gallons, or a little bag of them, a little small brew bag for a 10-gallon, 15-gallon wash, should be plenty. Or it wrapped up in some cheesecloth. What's going on here, Billy? Good to see you, brother. Just chillaxing, man. Just taking it easy. Hope everybody's having a good Saturday and a good weekend. What's going on, Jason? Doing well, brother. Dang good, dang good. How about yourself? Yeah, tin roof rust. In the Love Shack, baby. Is that what you was commenting on, the Love Shack? That's a fun song. Yeah, I think a lot of people use the doubler too often. I think it's used. I think it's overused. It's a good tool to have, but I've seen people that run it everything they do, regardless of what they're doing. They're running a thumper, and I don't necessarily think that's the best thing. For like brandies and other things. Um, Maybe not the best thing. I love it for adding tails too. But don't confuse a thumper with an infusion rig. So they serve different purposes. And they're both good tools to have and use. But I think I've seen people use their thumper for everything they do, and that's probably something that you should get away from. Yeah. Now, lactose infections can be good if they come to the middle towards the later end of fermentation. If it comes before your yeast get a foothold, it's horrible. It's really hard to control, and it'll compete for your yeast. With all your nutrients, it's going to compete for those nutrients. It's going to eat sugar. It's also going to metabolize alcohol. So it's a horrible thing to have early on. Um, to get rid of it, you can pasteurize. You can heat everything up to 160 for 20, 30 minutes, and it'll kill off that lacto, and then repitch your yeast once it cools back down. That'll work. You can just pitch more yeast at it, and hopefully it'll start taking a hold. Um, some people do that, or you can just run it, because a lot of times that lacto will get so thick, and it muddles it, and it's hard for you to get a good reading on your hydrometer because it changes the density, and without affecting the sugar so much, it changes, because that's all you're really measuring is the viscosity basically of the mash liquid. So a lot of times it gets thick, and even though you don't have those sugars there, it kind of replaces it with a thickness and a higher viscosity, and it kind of gives you fake readings, that there's still a lot of sugar in there when there's really not. So sometimes it's best just to run it and clean everything really well, because you don't want to start out with one. It'll reinfect real easily. So if you got like wood spoons you stir with, you definitely, paddles or something that gets in those pores, you really need to clean it out and let it soak in some, you know, real hot water. Will kill it off pretty well. Cleaning with hot water will kill it off. That Sanistar sand will clean it off. A lot of people say use bleach. It's just so hard to rinse bleach out that I really don't recommend using bleach to. I mean, that'll definitely kill it, but it's hard to get that bleach taste out of things. You have to rinse them and wash them off a lot to get that bleach taste out. And some setting it out in the sun, let evaporate out helps a lot too. But it's just tough. What's going on, Tim? Can you run your mash right after a vinegar water cleaning? Uh, yeah, yeah. I would anytime you use the vinegar, and steam it through your steel, I would definitely recommend steaming some water in behind it to clean out all that vinegar, and clean it out and rinse it out real well, or just rinse it out real well. If you can get to everything, and spray it down real good and get some pressure on it from hose pressure or something, clean it out real good. Should be okay. But it's sometimes hard to get it all out of your worm, so it certainly wouldn't hurt to run some vinegar first and water second, or alcohol. If you got a sacrificial run of alcohol, like JJ's doing. If you want to bucket that stuff up and use it for cleaning later, it works just fine. It's not going to coat your steel with badness. It's just a sacrificial run, and it'll clean things out, and you can continue to run it. But after you do, I just rinse everything with water. the week you lost being a country song. Uh-oh. That sounds like Clint. Dog died, truck broke down. Yep. I hate that, man. Oh, hell, I didn't notice that until I said that. That's horrible, man. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a love song or a country song for sure. Yep, yeah, definitely R.I.P. to the Chuck. He was a badass, wasn't he? And a true patriot. Muscadine wine. I like the sound of that. That's great, man. That's great. So you gonna share that secret with old Santa where that is? Is it far from me? Love me some muscadines. And that's the best kind of muscadines, them free ones. It was so tempting to get some of them strawberries, make some strawberry wine. I wanted to so bad. $1 a pound. That's a pretty good price for strawberries. They were pretty good. We got enough to eat on. But I got a bunch of strawberry wine, champagne in there. Still ain't drink, so. Started you some more rum today. Awesome. Using blow-off tubes in a bucket of Star Sand. All right. Yeah, they get messy. And you can save that dunder. You can reuse that dunder next. And it's grungy, messy, but they say the grungier, messier, and stinkier it gets, the better rum it makes. So I don't know. I've seen some pretty nasty dunder pits. I've seen some flies buzzing, animals dropping in and dying, and man, they said all that's good, makes it good. Yeah, 15, 7, 5, 16. Yeah, it's gonna be up there. Yeah, it's a good thing they don't know it. They don't know any better. It's just stinging them a little bit. Awesome. There's a lot of people making rum. That's good, man. It's a good, easy thing to make. It's sugar based, molasses based. Goes pretty smoothly. I highly recommend using the rum yeast that's got the uh, glucoamylase in it to help it finish off. But there's nothing wrong with it having a little bit of sugar retained to give it some sweetness. Yeah, and sometimes, there's a lot of unfermentable sugars in there. That's why I say add that glucose, because it'll help make some of those, what they call limit dextrins, and some of the molasses. Man, am I squeaky chair that loud in my microphone? I don't know. It seems off squeaky. I'm going to have to get me a new chair. This thing's on its last leg, man. Last leg. I guess it's still got 4 of them, right? It wouldn't be sitting here with one-legged chair. Man, it'd be fun. Yeah, but sometimes it'll have those unfermentable sugars, and it seems like it's taking forever, and it's just yeast can slowly chisel away at what it can, and then the rest it just can't. So sometimes it's best just go ahead and run it. But that's one of the reasons I recommend using that rum yeast. And I don't know that you really want your rum to get dry, so having a little bit of retaining a little bit of sweetness isn't bad. Yeah, you can reuse them and reuse them. One thing you can do is anytime you're dealing with sugar or grains or anything, you're always going to be boiling water, right? So, after you use your shells, rinse them out, set them out, let them dry out. And then when you're boiling the water for the next mash, just throw them in there for a little bit. You pull them out with tongs and, kill off any bacteria that might be growing on them between the last wash or mash and now. And that'll take care of any kind of bacteria or anything that you'd have to worry about on there. And then pH, adjust your pH with a little back set. If you're rum, you can use some at Dunder, or if it's just regular, you can use some back set to help lower that pH. You don't have to save and spend on some citric acid. That's the thing about it. You always got something to pH down with, and that's back set. So we keep a jar of it in your, or a big old gallon jar of it in your refrigerator or wherever. And anytime you need to drop pH, you can just take some of that back set, lower your pH. And that's your pH down. You get it about 5.3, 5.54, to help conversion. It helps break those glycosidic bonds up. When you got amylase enzyme, your alpha and your beta and your gluco breaking up and debranching all these, glycosidic bonds, it helps break those bonds. Yeah, and pickling lime works really well. Calcium hydroxide pickling lime. If you need to raise pH and if you got your shells in there and you're about done and the pH is getting, really don't worry. Somebody was talking in one of the groups earlier today, and I want to note, when I do a podcast and I'm sharing it to different groups, you need to open it up in the group. You can go to the group page and just scroll down and turn up the volume and hear it, and that's fine. But we don't get the number for it. But B, if you reply in that group, it's not going to show up in our chat, right? So you need to actually click on it, open it up, and it'll open up in a new page, or on the same page, it'll actually open up. Then you'll officially be in the podcast and you can post your questions. I've seen some questions posted on some of the pages and we don't see those. So if you don't see your comments coming up on the screen here when you ask a question, that's going to be why. So go ahead and click on the screen, click on the picture, and it'll actually open it up. And then, we can see your comments and questions. Or else the only time that I would see it is if I were watching it in all the different groups, and I can't do that. I can't open up 10, 15 different groups and look at each question. That's why all of Facebook generally pops up here. All the different Facebooks from all the different Facebook locations will pop up right here. And then the two different YouTubes, YouTube's a little different. So yeah, go ahead and click on that picture and then ask your questions, because we're just not going to see it if you comment there within the group itself. So it'll make it easy. If you don't see your comment on the screen here right after you type it, then that's why you need to go ahead and open it up, because I've seen some comments made in groups and stuff, and I'm not able to see those. So go ahead and open it up. Open up the podcast and then type in, and you'll see more comments too that way as well. But yeah, pickling lime, I always keep some of that pickling lime on you. It's better to use than, baking soda, sodium, sodium, because the sodium in the baking soda is it's not real good for the yeast, whereas calcium hydroxide is both of them are going to oxygenate the yeast, right? It's going to oxygenate your fermentation, which isn't great in the middle towards the end, but it's better than stress. So using sodium bicarbonate, probably not as good as calcium hydroxide because of that. Both are going to oxygenate, but the sodium not real good for the yeast, and probably going to leave some salty. It'll add some kind of, if you use too much especially, it can kind of affect the flavor a little bit. What's going up? Going on? Yes, I'm doing well. I understand. I hope you had a great St. Patty's Day. Good to see you back. I had green on, but it was hidden. Dog head bubble. I ain't heard that one. Dog head bubble. Got roughly 3 quarts so far. White rum, 1 quart of spice rum. Yep, and if you save those tails, if you run it out and save those tails, the next run you'll increase your production. So that helps a lot too. Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just a little slower, and you just have to do it more often. That's all. And it's a little tougher making the cut. So I will say, once you move up to a bigger steel, and you will, trust me, you will. Everybody does. Uh, it'll be a little easier for you to make your cuts, and you won't have to run as often. And you'll probably use that 4 gallon pot for a thumper next. It'll be about the right size once you get you a keg or a 18 half or 15 or you know. But yeah, everybody starts. I start out on a little pressure cooker, right? Like a 32 quart pressure cooker. Yeah. Yeah, Star Sand does a real good job, and it seems like it's expensive when you buy a bottle. It's like, damn, it's expensive. But once you see how little bit it takes, man, I mean, we're talking like just half a teaspoon, per gallon. Just not doesn't take much. It's pretty strong stuff, and it's not a cleaner. It's a disinfectant. So a lot of people think it cleans. It's not for cleaning. You can use other stuff to clean, but this just kills the bacteria. It's a acidic based bacteria killer. So it's really good. A lot of people say you can just rinse and go. Some people say you don't have to rinse it off, but I'm going to rinse. I'm always going to rinse it off. But yeah, it does a good job of killing that lacto too. One and a half to 2 gallons. So well, you got 12, 10, 12. Yeah, that's about right for a 12 gallons. I get about two and a half on mine, and that's around about 15 before I proof it down. So that's about right. Yeah, and you can do a bigger mash. You don't have to do small mashes each time. Just do a bigger mash and a bigger barrel, and scoop off 3 gallons every time you want to run. And that way you don't have to mash in and do all that. It's a lot more work. That way you can just anytime you're ready to distill, just go out there and siphon off a few gallons and let her rip. Then when it starts to get a little low, you got you some sour mash in the makings. Just add some. Well, if you want to go that route, you can add some water and sugar and grain, or depending on how you wanted to do the sour mashing. The old sour mashing methods is a far cry different from the Uncle Jesse's simple sour mash. That's a totally different lazy way of doing it, but it works. It works. All right, Tim. I see you said okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, can you run and mash? Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, you're welcome, brother. I want to make sure that I addressed your question there. Weeks and months. I've seen people let it sit for years. I've heard people leaving their in mash, grain mashes. Let it sit 8, 10 months. Oh, I forgot all about that. They go look, and it looks okay, it smells okay, and they run it, and it's like, damn, that's some of the best ever. So yeah, it's fine. It'll just keep the critters out of it. Yeah, he's been thunderstruck, man. There you go. Yeah, well, I think some acetobacters can overcome some alcohol because actually acetobacters will feed on alcohol, JJ. They feed on that stuff, man. They love it. They feed on ethanol by oxidizing it into acetic acid vinegar in the presence of oxygen. So that's the process. They metabolize it into acetic acid through vinegar in the presence of oxygen, and that's how they consume alcohol. So I'm trying to see what tolerance though. Up to 20%. Acetobacters can survive in high alcohol environments up to 20%. So 40 proof. Wow. So they're pretty effective at converting alcohol. We don't want them to do that, but Mike does. So I didn't realize it's that high. It sounds like I'm sitting on a cat. Well, this chair moves. It's got quite a bit of a mobility, and it squeaks like hell. I need to get me a new one. I hope old Mark Morgan's getting better because nobody in here calling damn shots this Saturday night. Y'all get me damn thirsty. Y'all let me go all damn night for a drink. Let's see what we got here. Damn, I have to measure and see which one I need. Oh, Lord. See, I need to drink this one in. All right. That's easy to... This Derek. No, this is Joe's. This is the 50-50. Joe's and Derek's. And that's Derek's. There's quite a bit more of that gone. I need to drink some of this now. Yep. Set that over there. Yeah, you need to keep that pickling lime. And it's good for a lot of other things, pickling, gardening. Yeah, so pickling lime to bring your pH up, backset to take it down. So that's something you keep. You don't have to worry about keeping, citric acid on hand. It gets a little expensive. And you can also clean with that, with your back set. It's acidic. Instead of vinegar, you could run back set through. It's acidic. It's what you want is acidity. The vinegar is nothing other than you're using it because it has a certain percentage of acidity. So, you could boil some back set and water up and run that through your, still to clean up just the same. Awesome. Well, you've already ordered it. I hope it's all right. Yeah, it'll be good. It's a good size. I like 10 or better, but, you know, it is what it is. 8 gallons, fine. Anything that gets you in the hobby starting out's fine. Like I said, I started out on a 32 quart, what is it, 8 gallon? So that's the same thing you're starting on. A big old pressure cooker, old cast aluminum, what I think it was. And I wouldn't use it today, but back then it worked pretty damn well. What's going on, Richard? Good to see you, brother. The closer the better, really. If you keep that thumper closer and use a shorter arm, see, that's one of the things about using them all the time, though. the closer you keep that thumper to your steel, the better, because it maintains that heat better, right? You don't want it condensing into your thumper, because you just get a lot more water build up and a lot more condensation build up in there unnecessarily. So the warmer you can keep it, the shorter the path you can keep it into that thumper, generally the better it's going to work at reducing the buildup in your thumper. And a lot of times, if your thumper is not sized properly, that can become a problem. It's always good to have a drain on your thumper for that reason. So if your thumper starts puking over, you can always drain some of that out, and it's always good to have a drain on your thumper. Or you can retort it back into the steel. You can drain it out or retort it back into your steel and let it get a second run if there's a little bit of liquor still in it. All right, let's see, 850, 902. I'm not too bad behind. Yeah, 8 gallons is fine. It'll get your feet wet, and it'll get you running, and it'll be easy to run. Now, if you're going to run on your stove, make sure your stove doesn't cyclone it off. Ozzy Osbourne flying around in here. Damn, that's a big moth. So, got him. So 8 gallons is plenty. It's good. If you're going to do it on your stove, make sure your stove, when it's on high or medium high to high, doesn't cycle on and off, on and off, on and off a lot. You kind of want to avoid that. So if it does, you could either use a hot plate, or you could put it on a turkey fryer and use gas. But if it does, it's not the end of the world. But it does make it much more difficult to make cuts. It tends to blend everything, so you get some smearing from the temperature rise and fall. You get it's kind of a spectrum of heat going at your distillate in there, and then you get a mixed bag of vapors coming off of it. So it doesn't send the fours and heads off at a higher percentage early on like it normally would. It does, but not as in the high percentage. So it can make it more difficult to make cuts, but it's still, if your oven just stays on like mine does, it's awesome. It's great. It's because that's what you want, is a constant, even heat. Good deal. Did you notice any difference? Should help with the crashing. I don't know. Don't want to get too high of a pH, because then you start worrying about bacteria and stuff. Well, the biggest concern with oxygenation during the middle of fermentation is that the yeast go into a reproductive cycle again, and they start reproducing when you really want them to be consuming alcohol at that stage in the fermentation. So you go from an aerobic environment from the very beginning, when you run a really heavily oxygenated to get your yeast up to producing a lot, reproducing a lot, and then you want it to get anaerobic, because with the lack of oxygen, you decrease the possibility of bacterias and stuff setting in, right? So if you do have to have baking soda or pickling lime, it is going to reoxygenate, but that is less bad, lesser of the evils than having the yeast stress, right? So yeah, it is not a huge concern, but it's something that you want to try to avoid, and that's why we go ahead and use those oyster shells, just to avoid having to, try to adjust pH right in the middle. But again, it's not as bad as stressing your yeast. But yeah, it kind of sends them back into a reproductive mode, and sometimes you don't want them to reproduce too much. You want them to kind of die off there at the end, and that works out best if they don't try to reproduce too much too often and end up getting low on nutrients and over reproducing, getting low on nutrients, and then having that kind of stress as well. So, but again, it's much better than letting it get to pH to twos and the real low threes. Most of your yeast can handle. Now, some more so than others. Your wine yeast, champagne yeast, is going to be able to handle a little bit lower pH than some of your bread yeast. But again, it too, you can acclimate them. So you can, if you keep reproducing them, if the pH gets a little lower each time you step it down, then you can actually, train your yeast to have a little more tolerance to lower pHs. That's how they've created wine yeast and specific yeast. So, but yeah, it's that's why we use the oyster shells to try to prevent reoxygenating. And two, during like a grain fermentation that generally is like 4 days, 5 days, right? And if you keep all your variables, as close to perfect as you can, like they do in most distilleries, for 3 or 4 days, and it's ready to go. So oxygenation isn't as big a critical an issue. When you punch your cap down, get a little bit of oxygen. It's not a big issue because it's done in a day, or it's done the next day. So it's like 3 or 4 days you're done. But like in a wine, you really want to be careful about adding oxygen during certain parts of the fermentation during the wine. In wine, oxidation is something they definitely want to try to control. Because it definitely can affect the flavor of your wines and your brandies. Yeah, the angle of it is different. Up, you get more refluxing back into the steel. Straight out, you get a little reflux and a little bit of mostly flavor and reflux combined. And angling down, you get more flavor and hardly no reflux at all. So, but distance too, you want to try to keep it as close as possible to maintain that heat. I've seen some people wrap, the pipe insulation around their copper, the foam pipe insulation around your copper. That works fine to help hold that heat and maintain that heat. You don't need it after it comes out of the thumper, though. I've seen them carry it too far. They take it all the way to the worm. When it's coming out of the thumper, you want it to start cooling off. So that'll be awesome, man. That'll be awesome. Now you can do it either way. You can do it straight up and down, or you can turn it on its side like a submarine, and I've seen them do them all different kinds of ways. Yeah, most people do. Most people graduate. They'll start on a 5 or 8 or 10, and next thing you know, they're wanting a 20 or 30, right? So, but some people, they'll stick with that 10, and that's just fine with them. If you don't have a lot of thirsty friends, and 10 might be just for you. I got too many thirsty friends. I got a lot of mouths to feed. Well, it doesn't defeat the purpose after it's done its purpose, right? So after it's killed all the bacteria, rinsing it off isn't going to defeat eliminating the bacteria. The bacteria is eliminated. I just don't like leaving any residue of anything on there, so I rinse it off. But it's not going to defeat the purpose. Think about it. You've put the star scent on there. It's killed the bacteria off. So whether you leave it on or rinse it off, the bacteria has been killed, right? So hopefully. Yeah. Definitely want to get the right size your column properly. Larger steel like that, you definitely want to size it properly. I'd say a 4 inch should be pretty good on. Yeah, actually, if you have an 8 gallon pot, you want a 6 gallon is about what you want to run on it so you don't puke. If I have an 8 gallon pot, can I make a 6 gallon batch? How much water and grain will I need to fit? Yeah, with if you want to make 6 gallons, then start with 12 to 14 pounds of grain, and that with your 6 gallons, converting 14 pounds, a little bit over two, and you'll get a good conversion. And then once you let it drain, you can squeeze it off, out in your little mop squeezer and or whatever, in your brew bag, squeeze it out, and you get. Probably should do more though. If you got a 6 gallon batch, if you want to distill 6 gallons, I'd probably start with 10, 8 to 10, and then what's left over can carry over to the next one, right? Right. Yeah, it's easy to make cuts in a little bigger pot. I run two 6.5 gallon fermenters. Well, that's good. That'll work. Yeah. Well, you had to tell me. I'm far behind, JJ. Let's see. Oh, it's been taught after 10%, you're good. I'm not following. What are we talking about, JJ? I'm behind to the point I can't remember what we're referencing to here. Yeah, it's a shot for Chuck Norris. Oh, Acetobacters. Yeah, I didn't realize it's 20% either. And that's 40 proof, so that's pretty high. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that either, brother. That's why I wanted to Google it. I hate giving out facts, when I'm not sure, because that's how a lot of people say I was wrong. I was wrong about something, and oftentimes it's not that you're wrong; it's that you were misinformed. And a lot of times, we have to consider the source of the information that we get. So if we're fed wrong information, it's not that you're wrong, it's that you were misinformed. You're right about what you were taught. It's just that whoever taught you that was wrong, right? So you just, you carried their mistake forward. So a lot of times don't look at it as if you were wrong. You were right. That's what you read or you were taught. It's just that the source wasn't correct. So that's why it's important to especially these days on the internet, to consider the source. And I hate dogging Reddit, but there's so much wrong information on there. It's pathetic. It's just and a lot of websites. There's a lot of misinformation on websites, and a lot of people think because it's written down on the internet, it's fact, right? And Wikipedia, they think everything in Wikipedia is a fact, and they don't realize that Wikipedia is just fed by individuals, and some of those individuals may sometimes be very knowledgeable and sometimes not. I used to sit around all the time and look at stuff on Wikipedia, just trying to find things that were wrong and send in corrections and stuff. So, there's a lot of wrong stuff on Wikipedia as well. But don't look at it as if you're wrong. It's just that, you were misinformed. And I've been misinformed on a lot of things. I wasn't aware, like until fairly recently, the source of high temp alpha amylase. I thought it was, still sourced from the same way a lot of the powdered was from, sweet potatoes and other natural sources. And it's a bacteria. It's sourced from a bacteria. So that was good to learn. So I think I read the wrong thing on that. I was misinformed on that. So we learn. A lot of times we just re-educating with proper answers instead of quoting somebody that gave us the wrong answer. Yeah, me too, brother. I hope he gets feeling better soon. Miss him on here. Oh, son, now it's time to kick back and relax. Yeah, I miss my buddy. We need to get him back in here, man. I hope he's getting better. What's going on, Michael? That's that hippie crack. Yeah. That's something you need. That's Damon. That's something. That's down Damon's alley. This is on podcast. You need to get on Damon's. He loves that kind of stuff. Pumpkin spice sounds good, Frank. How you been, brother? That sounds good, man. The old West makes some pretty good spice rum. He's been making it a long time. He makes some good stuff. Also, Big Beard and Steel Wheel. What's Big Beard's wife's? What's her name? Damn it. She makes good spice rum too. Really good. Damn it. I hate that, man. I forget shit. Get too old. It doesn't stay for a long time. It just cycles. It just kicks the bacteria into a reproductive. I don't think it's going to affect as far as bacteria. I don't. Especially in if you're a wine or something that's going to go for many months and it's a secondary. Yeah, it'd be a lot more critical. But for like a beer mash or a grain mash, it's not that big a deal because, like I say, 3 or 4 days and it's done, right? So it would depend. It'd depend on what mash you had and what it was. But yeah, they're really strict on oxygen exposure to wines, and which is one of the reasons they tend to do closed fermentations. And they might not use an airlock, but they have some mechanism. Sometimes it's a floating something on the surface inside the fermenter to keep it down. There's a lot of different things. So, but they're real critical about keeping the oxygen, controlling oxygen when it does come in contact with the wine and when it doesn't. I know at the end when they do the degassing, they heavily oxygenate it then again. But they definitely want to control the oxygen because it can, oxidize the wine and create some off colors and flavors. So it's a lot more critical in brandy and wine making than beer making or mash making or whiskey making. Yeah, I mean, what making mead is the fermentation process. So actually distilling it's very easy. We preach go low and slow. That way you don't go too fast initially and scorch. But adjust your temperatures. Get it started going right. Crank it up. Get it going. Once it goes, you can cut back your heat a little bit and adjust your drip. On a 5 to 10 gallon still, you should have a drip, 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 drip. On a 10 to 15, just as fast as drips you can get without a stream. 20 to 40, you can do pencil lead streams. 100 gallons and on, the larger the still, the faster that you can run. I've seen these big, huge stills at these commercial distilleries just pour out like a garden hose. And some of the biggest, it's almost like a fire hose, man. It's coming out of there, man. So it steps. It's all proportional. But yeah, the fermentation part is very, it's what you're doing, making mead or making wine or making a grain mash. It has steps just like your mead will, and you can literally take that mead and ferment it into a honey shine, or a rum. So yeah, it's just like making mead. So instead you're using fruit instead of honey, or you're using grains, and you're converting grains. Now, once you start converting grains, it gets a little more complicated because we're using starches, we're converting starches, we're using amylase or natural enzymes inside some of the malts to convert the grains and to break them down and debranch them into fermentable sugars. So instead of just adding, a honey, which is a fermentable sugar in its own right. So, it gets a little more complex, but it's not as hard as it sounds, right? It sounds all scientific-y and all that, and you can make it as difficult as you want it, and it can be as simple as you want it. I've seen, people that have no idea what they're doing do it, and come out, just because they've done it repetitiously. They have no idea about the debranching and all the enzymes and all that stuff. They don't care. They don't need to know that. They need to know that I heat the corn for X amount of time at this temperature, and I gelatinize it. I let it cool, 155. I throw in my malted barley, and I let that work for 30, 45 minutes, and then I let it cool, and I throw in my yeast and nutrients or whatever, and I let it go, and that's all I need to know, and that's all they know. And they have some of the, I was that guy for a long time, and that's all you really need to know. And you can make perfectly good shine, or you can just take cornmeal and sugar and bread yeast and make shine. That's all you need to know. You don't, they don't need to know all the specifics. So you can keep it simple and do it, and get by and make a pretty good liquor, or you can learn as much about it and become a master, right? But just because you know everything about it don't mean your liquor is going to be better than somebody's run it for 40 years. They've got experience on you. So, you got to try applying some of your knowledge to practical experience. And then once you can combine the two, then it makes it even better because you got the best of both worlds. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're not perfect. You're welcome, brother. We got you. That's right. The boogeyman sleeps in fear. Chuck Norris being under his bed in that closet. I keep reaching it for that one. I'm going to have that thing drank before I'm done. Clintpedia, Santapedia. That's right. But we're wrong sometimes. There's been, I've been wrong once or twice. I can't remember what about, but I know I've been wrong about something. No, I was wrong about really wasn't sure the source of the high temp alpha. And I think at one point in time I may have quoted that guy's coming from a sweet potato, which is where they source a lot of the powdered alpha and a lot of the lower temp alpha. But it's not. It's sourced from a bacteria. I think Woody was talking about that. I learned that from Woody not too long ago. I didn't know where it was sourced. I thought it was, I mean, bacteria is natural, but I thought it came from like a vegetable or from a specific grain or vegetable, and it was actually from a bacteria. Yeah, we can go over it sometime, Richard. Yeah. Is it? Which one? One from the wood or from that lefty? From that cigarette? Or both? Yeah, I like to listen to the bubbles, man. I like listening to them too. I like having a sight glass. You know, I'm the same way, JJ. I like having that visual, something to satisfy my OCD. Sitting there watching I love watching the plates and watching the liquor dance on that copper mesh inside that sight glass. I like watching that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they like an anaerobic or an aerobic atmosphere when they reproduce. It's like it's like I don't know, aphrodisiac to them. All that oxygen gets them, in the mood. But once it gets anaerobic, they get down to brass tacks and start eating. They want to eat more when it gets anaerobic. But yeah, they when it gets a lot of oxygen, they like they puts that's like a lot of aphrodisiac for yeast, man. They like getting in and reproducing when that happens. There's my brother. Hope you're feeling good, my man. We just had a shot in your name, bro. Hope you're feeling better, brother. Yeah, they just make love, not alcohol, right? Yeah, it's just another shot. I'm a little late, but I'm going to do it anyway. Also, let me go ahead and share the rest of these links out while I'm thinking about it. Yeah, that'll get that taken care of. There on your Facebook. Let me share all these at once. Unless somebody complains, then send me a message. If they complain, I won't put it on their page anymore. I've never heard of anybody complaining though. So, but I will reiterate for those people that are watching us on a page that we share to. If you want to ask questions, you need to click on the link because I go through some of these and I see people asking questions, and it's actually in the group itself. So you need to click on the actual podcast, the picture part of it, and it'll open up in a new window, and then we'll be able to see your questions. Otherwise, it's just in the group, and the only people that can answer it would be people in that group. We can't see it. So if you're not seeing it post up on the screen, on the real time part, then we're not going to be able to see it either. But I got your message, Richard. I got you, brother. We can talk about it later on. All right, that wasn't so hard, was it? Facebook, just 5 more, man. Just 5 more. Let's see. There we go. Did you finally see my message, Clint, or have you not seen them yet on Facebook Messenger? Yeah, I like hearing them bubbles roll too. How's it going, Mr. Flanagan? I'm guessing you probably about as Irish as I am. Maybe more so. Good to see you, brother. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Once it gets to a certain point of alcohol, it's they can't handle it. But they do like the low oxygen. The low oxygen won't kill them off. That's that's a really good environment. It limits the bacteria. You limit the oxygen, you limit the bacterial growth. That's why we like having it slightly acidic, right? That's why we want it acidic and lower pH with low oxygen because that's the perfect environment to discourage bacterial growth. They prefer a higher pH, higher oxygen, and warmer. So cooler with an acidic environment and low oxygen is three things that bacteria hate. They really like a warm, moist, oxygen rich, neutral to positive pH. Um, and that's a more environment that's more conducive for bacterial growth. But there are bacteria that will. It did, didn't it? It worked. Yeah, well, a lot of the O2 it gets pushed out. It's hard. One thing, that cap, you have that cap protecting it, so the oxygen, only really penetrates the top, hits the top of the cap, and doesn't really get down into the liquid. But that's why we gently press that cap down, and what's called punching, and pushing it down and getting it moist. Getting it alcohol, once you get that alcohol from the mash on it, it helps kill the bacteria. Also helps oxygenate the cap. You can see it kind of crack like cornbread does on the top. It starts cracking from getting dry and allowing oxygen in a little bit deeper. So if you can keep it pressed down and keep it somewhat moist, it helps hold in the CO2 and shield the O2 from getting to it. Yeah, yeah. So certain alcohol levels, they have certain tolerances, and they just can't get, like bread yeast 12, 14, EC 11, 18 is 18 to 20. Turbo, some of those turbos, the hell they go up to 24. It's just crazy, but yeah, but that's good for fuel production. I'm not following you. I'm not following you, JJ. What are we talking about now? That's what happens when you get behind. I'm about 12 minutes behind. Yeah. An aerobic environment means it's oxygen rich, and an anaerobic environment means that it's oxygen depleted. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have any, it's just not oxygen rich. And there's several reasons that we want to start out with a very oxygenated mash. So when you start your mash off, you want to heavily oxygenate it. So, oh, I see. So you want to, yeah, we need to get Alan back on here soon. We were supposed to have him last month. It went by so quick, and we definitely got to get him back on here soon. And Amanda, she's shy. It's hard to get her on these, but I do want to try to get her on. Um, but I don't want to get to the point where it's tough. She's very busy. She has a distillery she's opening. Um, the thing they do with Damon and Wayne is once a month, so she can kind of commit to that. But she's kind of a shy hermit, like I kind of am. You never know it, but so it's and she's very busy. She got the show. She's got a big distillery opening. She's got classes that she teaches. So it's going to be tough to get her in here. I can. I hate asking favors, but I'm sure I can get her on. But I'm just glad that she's in with Wayne. I mean, it's something else y'all can tune into and ask, and I'm really glad that we have it, right? So y'all definitely have to watch that. And it's on once a month, so you definitely want to catch those. The truth is out there. The proof is out there, especially if she's going to be on there. Nothing against Wayne and Damon, but yeah, man is very knowledgeable. But anyway, back to aerobic. So when you first start out, you really want to stir the shit out of your mash, right? When you're getting ready to pitch your yeast, you want as much oxygen in there as you can get. So you got that drill, you've got that paddle mixer. I mean, you're giving it hell. You're getting it to the surface where it chops up and bubbles. I mean, you really almost can't get enough oxygen in there at that point. Because at the very beginning is when you really want your yeast, when you add that tablespoon or two, depending on how much you got, you really want it to reproduce, or you pour that yeast starter in if you're doing it best of the ways. You really want that to really multiply your yeast at the very beginning and get that vigorous growth going. Not only does that give you a good foothold of yeast, if you've got, like we've seen, I was just talking earlier about some people have the lacto infection. So if you get that good foothold with yeast started, a lot of times it can keep those other secondary infections at bay, or at least keep them down. But if you get that lacto from the very start and you don't get a lot of oxygenation, you don't get a lot of yeast reproduction, you're going to end up with a very heavy lacto heavy. It's going to be consuming a lot of your sugars, a lot of your nutrients. What little alcohol is being, created, it can, metabolize as well. And it's really not going to be that good for you. Everybody's like, oh, lactose is a great thing. And it can be if it's managed and if you get it at the right time. So having that heavy oxygen environment early on can get you a good foothold with your yeast. It can reproduce, thrive, and establish a good colony. But that's when it's time for the yeast to go to work and start eating and consuming and taking these sugars, carbs, and converting them into alcohol. And you really want to focus on that. You want to kind of cut back on your oxygen so you don't encourage them to A, want to reproduce, and B, to discourage bacterial growth. So that's the two major factors of why you want to control your oxygen and make an anaerobic environment for the yeast. From that point on, we generally add enough yeast to do the fermentation all the way out. So after reproduction and all that goes on, we've got plenty of yeast to carry it all the way through unless it gets stuck for some reason or the other. And there's many reasons why. I don't want to go into that. That's a different story. But we want to try to keep it anaerobic throughout the rest of it. Now, at certain stages, when we punch the cap in, your Acetobacters, that's a bacteria that has to have that O2. And without that O2, you're not going to get that Acetobacter. And that would be considered a bad bacteria that you're trying to prevent. But at the same time, you're going to create acetic acid, that's just a byproduct of the fermentation process. But we want to try to limit that as well. So, and it depends, if you want a high ester fermentation and you're looking for those florals, like Alan was talking about, you can push that temperature of your yeast and get a higher esters and more acetic acid, creation. Or you can start with, back set and get that higher, acidic environment starting out. But I'm getting off the point. But anyway, so you really don't want to get too much oxygen. Now, when you punch that cap down, that's not going to introduce a bunch, of oxygen, right? It's not, you're not stirring it, you're not being vigorous. You're just kind of mixing things up on the top, and you're not really getting, chopping it up and adding a lot of oxygen, like adding baking soda would. If you've added baking soda to a very low pH crash ferment or sugar wash or whatever, you'll know that it's like a volcano. You add too much and it just foams, it goes crazy. That's really heavy oxygenization. Whereas just slightly punching your cap down, that's not going to create that kind of oxygenation. So it's fine to do that, and you can do that every day on a grain mash, because it's only going to be 4 days. So oxygen is really not that big of a factor or consideration. You just want to keep it minimized because you don't want bacterial growth, right? But 3 to 4 days, you're not going to get a lot of that. You're not going to get a lot of acetobacters from fruit flies that may find their way into the mash because it's just not enough time and not enough oxygen for it to really work on that small of introduction of that bacteria to that larger mash in that shorter period of time. Is just not going to happen. Whereas wine or brandy, when you're going to have a secondary fermentation that can last for months, then you have a long period of time for that bacteria to establish and set a foothold and become a little bit more predominant. And if you have that oxygen, which it needs, then that's the second thing it needs. It's got introduction of the acetobacter, and now we've got to have oxygen. Okay, we've got oxygen. Now if we let that pH just get a little bit high or too high, then we've got everything we need, right? So, which is great for Mike when he's trying to make vinegar, but not so good for a wine. But that's the stages, and that's But in wine production, there is certain times that they do want to oxygenate, and very first, and then at the end when they degas, they oxygenate, and they're not as worried then about the color, the clarity, and all that, because that's already been established through primary and a long secondary fermentation, and they want to degas, so oxygenization at that point in time too can help with certain flavors. But that's getting pretty complex, and there's a lot of complex chemistry going on when you deal with that and talk about that. But that's advanced winemaking, and most of us never get to that point. But if you want to really get advanced in it, there's some great sources out there for you to read on finishing wines, and I've been into winemaking the last 10 years or so, and I get into it, and it can get quite complicated. It's very sophisticated. Last question was a no. Would it be an idea? Yeah. Well, for you, in your vinegar making, absolutely. But for us in winemaking and mash making, no. So for you, absolutely. You definitely want that. Yeah, I like being able to breathe a little bit too. Yeah, but I don't know. No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. It's bad, and I can't say it on this show. But yeah, not going to say it. No problem, brother. I got you. Yeah, it's a delicate balance. pH, oxygen, sugar content. Absolutely. Yeah, you definitely want the yeast to consume all the sugar that you can, and it also depends on how dry. That's one thing about fermentations is a lot of times there's certain things that that don't really carry forward to the distillate. Dryness does. So if you stop something at 1.0 or 1.1 or 1.005 or something like that, where it's just slightly on the sweet side, you can definitely tell a difference in that and something that goes to point 0.9, totally dry with no sugars. Even after you distill it, you'll get like a dry gin. That's how they make a dry gin. They ferment that to where it's a very dry fermentation. They ferment all the sugars out of it, and then there's special processes too, of course, that helps make it dry for the distillate. But you can definitely taste the difference in a dry ferment versus something that just finishes to one. That's why when we say, if you want to let it sit for a while, that's fine, but it will become a little bit on the dry side if you don't mind that. Whiskeys, it's not so critical, because it's especially if you're going to put it on some char, a little bit of dryness doesn't hurt. Whereas if it's like a rum, probably not going to be as good, or some people just don't like it, a dry ferment. But that is something that will carry over. But yeah, you think if we say Alan and Amanda enough, they might just jump in here. That'd be awesome. Yeah, yeah, you could put a bubbler in there, and feed oxygen to it. You definitely, and but I wouldn't necessarily raise the pH because you still want to discourage other bacterias, because the aceto and acetic acid can handle an acidic environment, and that's what you're creating is acetic acid. So yeah, and once they overbreed, once you get to the point where your yeast have overbred, a they start running out of nutrients. B, they ferment too fast, and really you want to step. They're talking about step feeding, in longer fermentations. Now, like grains, it's 4 days, and you don't really need nutrients, especially with malt. But for like brandies and tequilas and things that might take a little longer, step feeding over a longer period of time is a thing. And they're finding out that it's better to do that than all at once. So might be something that you want to try with your vinegar as well. Yeah. Now in winemaking, um, you want to degas before you go into the bottle. A lot of times, and you also want to stop fermentation. So we do that by adding potassium metabisulfate or potassium sorbate. Potassium sorbate will basically neuter your yeast, so it doesn't necessarily kill them. It just makes it so they can't reproduce. And so they'll go ahead and they'll live out their life cycle, and then they'll just die off, and that'll be the end of that. They won't breed anymore. And or you can use potassium metabisulfate and just kill them out. Boom. You can also pasteurize, but raising the heat in a wine kills its character. So you really don't want to do that. Like I was recommending for that lacto mash, you could pasteurize that. It's not going to be a big issue because it's a distillation. Whereas in a wine, it would kill the wine. You wouldn't want to do that. So you add potassium metabisulfate. That kills that yeast. That way, when you bottle it, you're not still fermenting and building up a lot of CO2, which is going to pop that cork if you're just lucky. So sometimes in bottles break and it just, but a lot of people pop those corks and it can be a mess. That's why a lot of times in champagne and in sparkling wines, they'll finish it, and then they'll put some potassium metabisulfate or their potassium sorbate in there, and then once that's done, they'll put just a touch of sugar and just a teeny sprinkling of yeast in there to start just a micro fermentation again, just to keep it gassed up. And they'll put a cage on it. That's the reason they put that metal cage on top of your you can use them in tandem, but they put that metal cage on top of that to keep that cork from getting forced off, because that's what you want in that champagne. When they pop the top, it's under pressure, right? And that cage is help holding that stopper in, and that's why it starts foaming everywhere. So you got to be really careful, and you definitely want to stop the fermentation and degas. Especially, like if you want it to be a sparkling wine, like a sparkling white, you don't have to degas, but just make sure that you stop the fermentation. But like a red wine or something like that, if you don't want it effervescent and being all bubbly, and most of those, they don't want that, so you really degas it a lot. And when you're degassing it, you'll get tons of bubbles. The big bubbles are oxygen coming off, and the little bubbles are always CO2, so you can tell which ones you're gassing off at most at any given time. But yeah, and it's important, and but yeah, you can use them both in tandem. Yeah, Acetobacters definitely need oxygen. Yeah, you definitely, and you can degas them. You can take your mixer in there, and this is one of the stages where adding the oxygen doesn't hurt, because you've already gotten your color and your clarity, and it's just this time, and you're degassing it, then you're bottling, and you're going back to anaerobic again, because it's going in that bottle, and then it's just got a little teeny. That's why all these bottles and all these carboys have go up to a very small top, is so you can minimize that amount of oxygen that's sitting on top of this wine. The less, the better. That's why all the carboys go up to a small top, and wine bottles go to a small top, is so you can minimize the wine under the air underneath that cork, right, or the airlock. So that's yeah, and you definitely want to degas. Unless you're going to do a sparkling wine, and you definitely want to stop fermentation. But you don't have to degas if you want a sparkling, but you definitely want to stop fermentation before you bottle. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, many months, 6, 8, 10, 12 months in secondary. Yep. I think Big Easy just put one out. Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can. I think I got one in here. I can show you real quickly, and it'll be easy to show you. Hold on, just a second. Okay. This is called a triple scale hydrometer. And you can see the different colors on it. Now each different one will have different colors. This is fairly standard colors for one, but you'll see different colors in each of them. Now on each of these, you'll see a scale. And from right here, it'll be 1. right at the edge of the white, and that brown is 1. Any above this goes to nines, into the nines, but right there is 1.0. If I were to drop this in water, it would float right there at 0 because there's no sugar in water. And this is what this is calibrated with in water. This doesn't really count the sugars, it measures viscosity. And we know that as more sugars are added to water and dissolved into it, it becomes thicker and thicker until eventually it becomes a syrup, right? So we can adjust these based on the viscosity of the water and the amount of sugar in the water. Now, if you were to add something else that increases the viscosity, like a glycerin, or something like that, something thick that you could thicken the water with, it would read that glycerin as if it were sugars, right? So it's just measuring the viscosity. But starting with just water and sugar, as we add sugar, it's going to float higher and higher in the water because it's thicker and thicker. And the thicker it is, the higher it's going to float. Kind of like we float higher in salt water than we do in fresh water, right? Because it's got, there's more mass to salt water than there is to regular water, right? Same with this. There's more viscous, more mass in the sugared water versus just the plain water. So as we get more and more sugars, it goes up and it reads higher and higher and higher on this scale. Now this scale will show you, it'll go from 1.1010, 1.020, 1.030, all the way up to 1.160, which is extremely high, but that would be like syrup. Now, most of us will deal with anywhere from the middle of the blue to the middle to bottom of the yellow. So that goes from 1.040, 030 at the top here to 1.090. So depending on how much alcohol we want to create in this, that's about the amount of density in the water, the viscosity of the water based on the sugars. So you can turn this and it'll tell you how much potential alcohol you have. Now this doesn't tell you how much you're going to have. It tells you if everything ferments properly, how much are you going to have. So if we get to, let's just say 1.050, we can turn this around and we see that is exactly between 10 and 15. So that's going to be, 50 will be around 5, 6, 7% alcohol, a little over 7. So it says 5% up here at like 1.040. And then as we go to 1.50, it's a little over 6, almost 7. We get to 1.060, that's 5, 6, 7, almost to 8%. When we get to 1.078, that's 10%. And then when we get to 1.090, that's 10, 11, 12%. Then we're getting to about the limitations of bread yeast right at that point. So, and that's about pretty much the range that we're going to go. So that tells us, based on the amount of sugars in there, if it all gets consumed by the yeast, about how much alcohol we can expect in that mash when we are ready to distill it, or that wine or beer when we're ready to bottle it or finish it up. So that's basically what this hydrometer does. This is to tell you how much sugar you're starting with, and it'll tell you how much you're ending with. So it's going to start down here, and it'll end up here towards nothing. Now, your rums sometimes won't get out of the white because there's sometimes unfermentable sugars in there. Like we talk about, if you add some of the rum yeast that's got some glucoamylase, it'll help finish it to being dry. But that's when it gets to that little brown spot there. That's when it's dry. Oh, I'm sorry, right at the white spot, at the brown here. That's when it's dry. So if it sneaks into the white, that means it's starting to become dry. Or I'm sorry, right at the brown. It's hard for me to see with these glasses. But anyway, you get the gist of it. So that's basically, that's how your hydrometer works. The thicker that we start with, more sugars we get in there, the more syrupy it is, the higher it's going to float. As those get consumed, it starts floating lower and lower and lower until we get back to pretty much a neutral. And that's when we know it's about ready to run, when it gets, down to about right here, right at about the top of this last brown, before it starts getting dry, going into the white. So I hope that clears it up. So that's basically all it's doing. It's pretty simple. It's just knowing which part to read and how to call it. So anything above that is 1.1 and then 5.0, so until it becomes 1.2 way down here, and that's as far as it goes. It doesn't go to 1.3. So I guess way down here you could say it's about 1.3, but and that's basically what it does. It'll also give you the bricks if you wanna get into the bricks. But that's basically, most of us just use it just for potential alcohol and how much sugars that we have in there. And it's quite easy. Once you get used to it, it's not that tough. But learning the fundamentals of it, now that you know that, it'll be easier for you. And if you have any questions, ask me. Yeah, just hey, a lot of people do. They'll go back and catch some of the old shows. We answer a lot of the same questions. This one not as much, but I'm glad you asked it. So people that are out there listening, and watching can learn and pick up. I think Big Easy did one on it just not too long ago, and pretty informative. So you can catch his too over on Phil Billy's YouTube pages. He did a pretty good little, basically the same thing. That's basically how they work. So the more sugars, the more syrupy, the higher it floats. And right, now this is called a triple scale hydrometer. This is what we use for measuring sugars and potential alcohol. The other one is a proofing hydrometer, and it'll tell you how much alcohol and what proof it is, as long as there's no sugars in it, because sugars will affect it. So as long as you just have a pure distillate with no post-flavoring, no post-sugaring, I'm sure that you could probably, if you have an infuser with something really ultra sweet and heavy laden with sugars, it could potentially carry over and give you some false readings. But for the most part, most distillates are pretty easily read with the proofing hydrometer, and it can tell you what proof you have. And that's what the other hydrometer is. And it operates on the same method. The higher the alcohol content, the lower this is, going to sink, and the higher the proof it's going to show. So alcohol is lighter than water. So it's going to drop more. The higher the proof, the less water. So it's going to show higher proof as it drops further and further down into it. Yeah, another thing, Mike, is you need to encourage the flies, the fruit flies, because those carry the acetobacter. If you're not actually infecting it with some vinegar to start with, or mother of vinegar, the fruit flies can help carry that acetobacter. Yeah, I know. Got to put the fly traps out. I'll tell you what I do is I get some vinegar and a piece of decaying fruit, put it in a jar, and I'll tape a funnel to it, and they'll fly down into that funnel and get down in there, and they can't fly back out through that funnel, small opening. And you can do the same thing, I guess, if you just flip the, lid over. But that funnel, I tape it on with painter's tape, and it works quite well, man. Yeah, just at first, just look at the 1 point, and look at the numbers, the 1.010 and the 1.010, 20, 30, 40, 50 as it slides down the scale, and that'll tell you how much sugar you have. And of course, the more sugar that you have, the more alcohol potential that you're going to have, which the potential alcohol is not as critical because, we all preach, right? And we all preach 1060, to 108, 090. That's pretty much the range, and it's okay if you have a 50 with a grain, you didn't get a good conversion, you don't want to add sugar, that's fine. That's basically a beer. So, but in that range, that's pretty tight range of where we operate most of the time. Now, some people with rums will get a little bit outside the upper end of that, which is fine. You want to get higher production. If you're going to do vodka, it's okay to get outside that range because you're going to be, you know, distilling it to a flavorless, high proof distillate anyway, so it's not as critical. So it's okay to cheat a little bit above that and get close to, 1.1. Yeah, I've had some good wine turned to some good red wine turned to vinegar. And a lot of people, oh, I bet that's horrible dumping out. Well, hell no, it made a good cooking wine. It's great for cooking with. Makes good for the sauces, and pouring in. Damn, am I that far behind again already? That's not too bad, 18. I need to try to keep caught up. My son's about to get married into bourbon hunting. He wants to make his own liquor. Is there a beginner still? Yes, there's quite a few beginner stills out there. I highly recommend the old Vever. It's a very simple still. It comes complete with everything you need to run. Look how long these pictures are taking. Man, just built this PC for gaming, and I swear to God, it's slower than my other one. I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna have to figure it out. It's starting to get on my nerves, and it's not good for gaming. Hell, the old one that cost $500 is faster than this one. It's crazy. But let me get you a picture of it and I can explain, and we can go over a couple of different alternatives. Um, this is a Vever, what we call a football steel. We call it a football steel because of the shape of the cap that's on the top, right? Excellent starter steel, very cheap. You can pick this 18 and a half gallon, which means you can do about 15, 16 gallons in it. And that's a substantial amount. That's good for a beginner or intermediate or advanced if you don't really want to put out a whole lot. Um, but it comes complete with everything you need. It's got a canister condenser, which not the best in the world, but it's adequate starting out. Comes with a pump that is not going to be adequate if your water source is low and you're pumping up from like the floor to up above the stove or 5 feet in the air. That pump's going to be a little inadequate, so you may have to raise your water reservoir up or get a little bit better of a pump, right? So we're talking about maybe a pond pump or a 300 400 gallon per hour pump. It doesn't have to be anything, just with enough power to get it up the height. But this is an excellent starter setup for somebody just beginning. It's easy to clean. You don't have any copper to maintain, and you can put copper mesh inside this football when you're dealing with distillates that you're wanting to remove some sulfur from. If you get some sulfur buildup and some sulfur in some of your distillates, some of your brandies tend to have that, and some of your grain mashes will have it. You can put some copper mesh inside this football, and it'll help remove those sulfites for you. So you don't have to have an all copper steel anymore. We can use this copper mesh to help that. Or you can use the good old why are these pictures not showing up? Guess I need to click all files. That's what I needed to do. Where's my keg picture? So anyway, it looks like a beer keg. Where's my beer? You know what a beer keg looks like, but let me find it here. I'm getting stubborn. I can't believe. Well, okay, here we go. I don't know why it's there and not the other place. So here's another option, is to use just an old beer keg. You can buy a beer keg for about $35, $45, or you can buy it with beer in it, drink it, and keep the keg and just lose the deposit. And you can buy these columns to sit on top, or you could use basically the same top that's on this football. See, at the very base of this football, you'll notice that there's a tri-clamp. And that's a specific new type of, well, it's not new, but it's not one that we paste like we used to in the old days, that we paste with rye flour or wheat flour. So it's a tri-clamp, so it makes it very modular. So you can take this football helmet off, and then you could add a column like what's sitting on top of this beer keg. And you can add different columns. You can, I need to fix my files. I thought I had them all together in the same spot, and I guess not. So I'm looking for the 4-inch column. I like using pictures because it's really worth 1,000 words. So you could set something like this on top of it, right? And get some higher proof. So it's really modular. Once you go to the tri-clamp setups, you can do a lot of different setups, and it becomes quite complex for intermediates and advanced. So having that capability is a big, huge plus. So for anybody that's getting into it, I would highly recommend either buying the keg and a little column like this, or getting this football steel and using this head. Now, you can use this head on a football, or I'm sorry, you could use this football head on a keg steel, or you can have caps made of copper, horse heads and things of that nature, and you can introduce copper that way, and you can go into a copper worm, a copper thumper, and you could do all copper after the stainless boiler if you wanted to. And that's why, upgrading this is very easy with that tri-clamp feature that's on there. But, definitely this would be probably for a beginner, intermediate, definitely highly recommended, the 18.5 gallon Vever. It gives you a good amount of product too. 18.5 gallons is going to give you about 2.5 gallons. Running 15, you're going to get about 2.5 before you proof it down. After you proof it, it depends on how low you want to proof it. So if you're proofing it to 80, you could have 4 gallons, right? And you can get a pretty decent production out of it. And this would be something that you wouldn't need to upgrade for quite some time. These run about $230, $200. You can get them for $200 on sales, up to about $230. You can find them on eBay, Amazon, Vever, Vevor, and you can see the name on the little canister condenser there. But Vever, Vevor, and pretty good little setups. It's now it's not going to be like a copper steel. If you want to have the best, you can go with a copper rig. An equivalent copper rig that's 18.5 to 20 gallons is going to cost thousands of dollars. So you can spend a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand. Copper's better, but it's starting to lose its major benefit when you can add that copper mesh into the head of this and remove the sulfur. That's one of the biggest benefits of having the copper steel is removing that sulfites from your distillate. But B, also it's good in even heating, whereas this stainless isn't going to be as even heating, as a copper steel would. But with a copper steel, you're going to have expense and you're going to have maintenance that's going to be a lot easier on this. So it works pretty well. And you can ferment in this as well. It's got a little air lock on there that you don't need on there when you're running. But so you can ferment in this as well. It's a good, nice size vessel for fermenting. You can boil your water in here that you're going to use for, gelatinizing your grains, or you could actually cook your grains in here. It's very versatile. I highly recommend this. It's a good little pot for somebody just getting started. And once you get it, have them come in here and we can take them step for step, everything they need to learn how to do to make bourbon. Now, it's going to take some time because you have to age it, in a barrel to get that good bourbon flavor. You can use the staves, or you can use the spirals or the chips and speed up the process, but it's not going to be quite as good as a good quality bourbon. But yeah, this is definitely something. If he's wanting to get into it, should grab that and jump in here and talk to us about it. We can lead him step for step how to convert grains and why, and we can get scientific with it, and how it's breaking down. We can show the amylase, the enzymes exactly that you need to help break down the starches and make more simple sugars out of complex sugars. We can take him through every step of the way. But that would be my high recommendation would be a beverage still. I've got one. I run it. I run a columns now like that, but used to be similar to that, but a lot more complex. But yeah, it's very modular, so you can do a lot with it, work a lot with it, and it's great for beginners all the way up into advanced. You can do some advanced distilling with it, so it's a lot of fun. But yeah, you found the right place. Get you that beverage still for him, and get him in here, and we can get him started. And another good idea would be to have him join, if he's on Facebook, have him look up DIY Shine and Steel Building, and join that group. 20-some thousand in there, and ask questions in there. If we're here on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so but if he has questions to ask, in between, or he can jump in there and ask it, and we can help him out in there, or join the Moonshine Militia. That's also on Facebook, and we can answer all the questions there. Or there's a lot of groups also that I share this podcast to that are also great. There's a lot of great informative groups. Some, I add them in for like 5 or 6 of them. And there's a lot of good groups in here, not just ones I'm admin in, but a lot of very knowledgeable people running some of them, and some of them not so much. So it's good to find somebody knowledgeable, that's been at it a while. Now, too, when you do your Irish Scout or Irish GIP or LP, yep, okay. Also, when you do read, that's generally at a room temperature, like 60 to 70 degrees. So there are some adjustments to be made if the distillate is a higher temperature. So it's not great, but you can, and it should come with a little chart, and if not, we can help you out on that. So it will make a slight difference if the temperature is higher. Generally, it's not going to be any lower, than that. But sometimes, the temperatures can be, in the 80s or 90s, and there's slight adjustments. Nothing substantial. Nothing to worry much about, right? Yeah, that or the cake steel. Both of them. The cake steel's great. It's more durable than the football, but you're not going to be able to use it on a smooth top, so you're pretty much limited to gas, and you're not going to be able to use electric plates or anything like that, or a stove top. Uh, but both work great. Yep, classes in session. Right. And that's what they do with champagne. They'll degas, they'll kill off the yeast, they'll degas it, and then they'll add just a touch of sugar and just a touch, and I mean just little grains of yeast and sugar. And they measure it exactly. They know. But yeah, that's how they do it. Pretty cool, huh? Right now, there is some alcohol sugar. Have you experimented with that any? I'm trying to think of what the name of it is. I bought Ann some because she's a diabetic and they use it a lot, but I'm trying to think of what it's called. I can't remember what this shit's called. And Googled xylitol, and it's used in gum a lot. But xylitol is non-fermentable, and you can sweeten it up a little bit with that. But some people, of course, some people are like, "Oh no, that's bad for you." That quart of liquor they drink every day is not so bad, but that xylitol is going to kill you. Man, people are funny, aren't they? Yep. Some of these people worried to death about getting a little bit of mercury out of brass that's in your plumbing in your house, but drink half gallon every 2 days. Well, that's interesting. Man, I tell you, YouTube, what's going on, man? That's crazy shit. Man, I want what he just ate. Yeah, Ann's got to. She's got diabetes, so she can't drink no more of my sweet heat wine. She loved that stuff. It was so good. It's back sweetened white wine that's high proof. It's had time to. It's not so astringent anymore, and it's damn good stuff. Yeah, but I don't think vinegar is going to be fractionally distillable. Even though because I know it's not azeotropic, but there's another term, and it's very similar to being an azeotrope, and I'm trying to think of the term, and I can't come up with the term. I can't remember. It's a scientific term, and it's not on the tip of my tongue. But it's not azeotropic, but it's very similar to an azeotrope in that it does not want to come unbound that easily. So it's you're still going to get vinegar, when you distill, even though you're not reaching that temperature that pure vinegar would be required to distill. What is that word? Damn it. This is killing me. I ain't getting old. I used to know all that shit. I can't think what that word is. Fucking Google Tangent pinch. God damn it. I can never remember. It's called a tangent pinch point. And it's because of the way it's bonded, it's so close that it is a tangent bond, and it comes over. It's not an azeotrope, but it acts just like an azeotrope. And they call it a tangent pinch. I can't remember that. Getting old sucks, but that's pretty cool. Because they're so close in boiling points that instead of it being azeotropes where they bond and they change boiling points, this doesn't change boiling points, but they're just so close together that they come off together. So it's not like an azeotrope, but they're so close together in the tangent that they come off together. And the bonds don't break that easily. It's a hydroxide bond. Tangent pinch. I never can remember these things, man. It kills me. Yeah, red wine's good for a lot of things, man. Antioxidant. And, having a shot of whiskey is not bad. It's just over imbibing that becomes. I would never do anything like that. Don't listen to him. This is the only one that you can. There are a lot of great stuff out there. There's a lot of sources. We prefer you come here, though, and join us. We like having you here and asking questions. And if you have any, that's what we're here for. One of the things about us there's lots of very informative podcasts out there. But generally, they'll either pick a topic and talk about specific topics, which is great. Because if you want an answer about a specific topic, if they do that topic like Amanda and Wayne did and Woody did on yeast, then boom, you can find that yeast and watch it and learn all you need to know about yeast and answer any question you may have about yeast. But when you deal with a lot of podcasts, it's a lot of general stuff, and they go, in order sometimes, and then sometimes it's just, talking about a lot of different things in general, and you have to watch a lot of them to get your questions answered. Whereas here, if you have a question, you can bring it to us and we can answer your questions immediately, and you don't have to watch a week's worth of videos to get that question answered. Or you can watch specific ones like, like the truth is out there, the proof is out there that, Wayne and Amanda did and Woody about like specific about yeast and more specific topics. Then you can watch those and get your questions answered a lot better than having to watch a week or a month's worth of videos to finally get the question that you had answered. That's the main reason why we created this show, is to be able to answer questions directly, so you don't have to spend a week or two. It's great doing, because while you're trying to find the answer, you can pick up a lot of other knowledge. Some might not be so good, and there's a lot of bullshit out there, but there's a lot of good podcasts out there, a lot of good information. But if you want a direct answer, being able to do that, it can be answered for you and explained, and it's that saved you having to spend days looking through some of these other ones just to get your answers. So that's what we're here for. Yep, that's a fact. You got to ferment something to make shine, or any distillate. So you got to learn how to ferment in different fermentation processes, and that's what we're here for. If you have any questions, you want recipes, we got groups with recipes in there that we can help you with, and or I can upload one specifically if you're looking for a specific one. I've got so many that I need to go through that it's just so hard to find time. But they're named, it's stupid. They're a bunch of PDF files, and they're named like, PR966664943, .pdf, and that tells you nothing about the recipe. So it's hard to search, for that apple pie recipe, or that, red wine recipe, or that strawberry wine recipe if it's named 967844443.pdf. And so I'm trying to go through and rename them based on the actual recipe, and at the same time looking at them to see if they're a legitimate recipe or if it's just BS that somebody's, turned out. There's a lot of that. Also, I'm looking for copyrights. I'm violating anybody's copyrights. And if they are, then I'll just change the wording a little bit, make my own, right? Maybe change a little bit of, instead of an ounce, it's 1.1 ounce, right? Just kidding. But yeah, we do have to watch out for things like that. Yeah, you can take a 2 liter, and cut the top off and flip it upside down and have that small. Yeah. Am I that far behind? Oh my God. Yep, 30 minutes now. Getting way behind. Yeah, I need a shot. I might get caught up. I need to drink more of this. It's awful easy to reach for Derek's, man. That stuff's so good. Both of them are really good. Damn, that's good. Good grain liquor. How's it doing, Conway? Awesome. Running some plum brandy. I love me some plum wine and brandy, man. That's awesome. All right. What question you got, brother? Let me scroll down here and see. I was wondering what Netanyahu. I was like, what in the hell is he talking about? Netanyahu rap. I was like, man, this. I was afraid to ask almost. Yeah, I tried to join. They wouldn't let me. I had injuries that wouldn't allow me to get the PT done. I had a shoulder dislocation, and instead of redoing it like they would by today's standards, this was in the late 70s. They just cut tendons and stapled it in just to hold my shoulder in, right? Nowadays, they'd go in and refix the rotator cuff and replace the bone with grafting and all that. I had half my rotator cuff missing. And no, this one just cut me over from there to there, cut tendons from my chest and wrapped them all the way around to my back and stapled it in my scapula and in the side of my shoulder just to hold it in place, right? And I tell doctors about that by today's standards. They just shudder at the crudeness of that's how much difference it's been in 50 years in medicine. Huge difference. It was brutal, barbaric by today's standards. But yeah, that kept me out of the military. I wanted to be a Marine. All my buddies went in the Marines, and I couldn't make it. None of them. I'd volunteer right now if they wanted me. I might not be able to run far, but I can shoot with the best of them. That's awesome. Yeah, it's making beer and wine's perfectly fine, and I just don't understand taxes. But some states it's legal, but nobody cares anymore, man. I mean, if you're selling it or making big amounts and selling it, and you know, yeah, I'm sure they'll care, especially states that have like ALE. That's all they do. But it's not like cooking meth or anything like that. It's you know, a lot of states it's becoming legal now. There's you know, but yeah, making wine and beer, perfectly fine. But what's crazy is federally you can't take wine, sit it out in the freezing cold temperatures, and let a lot of the water in it freeze, and just pull the ice out and throw it away. And when you remove the ice from the wine, of course you're increasing the proof. That's called jacking, or if as they like to call it, it's a fermentation process, frozen distillation is what they like to call it, and it's still illegal because technically that's distillation. There's no distillation at all, you know, but they like calling it freeze distillation, and that's illegal too. And that's just silly. You're not distilling anything. You're just turning the water to ice and pulling it out. So yeah, the laws are pretty barbaric and need to be changed. But in a lot of states, it's perfectly legal, and I think most places and most, again, unless they have the ALE, and then of course they, nothing against them. They have a job to do, and they got to do their job, and so keep it at home, keep it inside the home, keep it simple, and don't take it out, don't sell it, and just drink it with your buddies, for watching ball games and stuff, and nobody really cares, right? Kind of a victimless crime, and you're not really robbing tax dollars. But if you're making large volumes and you're selling it, then you're taking that risk. Would you? I don't know. I like them both, but I love the charcoal flavor of whiskeys and bourbons. Man, that's my weakness. I'm a bourbon freak. I definitely prefer a good bourbon, but I do love corn liquor. I love corn liquor, but I definitely prefer a good bourbon. Not me. What's going on, Monty? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, ding, ding, ding. We know what that means. Here we go. Let me ring that bell, man. Shit. That's that bell. It's touching some paper there. It's kind of keeping it from ringing good. That wasn't a good. Yeah, that's a little better. No, it's against the wood. Anyway, it sounds like a boxing match bell. 20 to 11, so we're going to wrap it up about 11. Good to see you, Monty. Hope you're doing good, brother. Yeah, we're here every Tuesday and Saturday at 8 Eastern time, so you found the best place to ask your questions. And also on the same channel that you found this is also the uh, Wayne and Amanda's. The proof is out there. And I thought it was just Wayne and Amanda, but I guess they did the first several, and Damon is involved as well. So Damon and Wayne, and they just have Amanda on all the time because she's awesome. But another good educational. Anytime we can get Alan Bishop on here, it's also going to be very educational. So we're going to try to get him back on here and talk as well. He's a distiller that works in the business. He's dedicated his life to it, and very knowledgeable. So you found a great place for education. There's George from Barley and Hops, another great set of videos. If you can find that on YouTube, that's another good source. And Cyrus He's a good source. Cyrus, a good guy. He's knowledgeable. Another good source. But there's a few out there that I'd recommend, and then there's a lot that's, you know, kind of mixed, hit and miss. Yeah, now as far as the flavors, but I just love that smoky. I've always loved that smoky char of the barrel and the flavors that it adds and the depths. I just love it. I mean, I've never been a big gin drinker. I like my rums, and I went through my tequila stages and all that, but I always come back to corn liquor or bourbon or whiskey. It's my weakness. Scotch, not so much. I mean, it's okay. Not real big on the single malt. That's why I don't do a lot of single malts. Never really experimented much with them. Uh, but just love a good corn liquor or bourbon. Yeah, that's my fave. Yeah, but I've been drinking a lot of wines and brandies. Once you get older, it's drinking straights, just a little bit here and there. A few shots on Tuesdays and Saturdays isn't bad, but I enjoy more wine than I ever did when I was younger. I didn't drink a lot of wine. Um, yeah, and you'll find all the old ones. So you can go back and watch from a year ago or maybe two. I don't know how long we've been doing this. Been doing it a while. Before this, I did another podcast. It wasn't quite as informative. It was more of a talk show type. We get people on from Master Distiller and stuff, and Roger and I did that for a while, and then before that, me and Mark Morgan and Roger Davidson did a podcast, all three of us together. But this is something I've always wanted to do, and something I kind of worked myself into because it's needed, and I've been doing it for a while, and there's some more. I think it's kind of catching on, and there's some more educational stuff coming, and a lot of people kind of gearing more towards it. George did it a long time ago, so he's great. So if you can find Barley and Hops on YouTube, you can watch that. That's very informative, and he's a pretty knowledgeable guy. There's a few things that I disagree with, and but for the most part, pretty much everything I've seen him say has been pretty spot on. So he's a good one to watch. But if you have questions, you're pretty limited on that. You got to come to us, right? Because nobody else is going to deal with you live one on one like we do. Yeah, and there's lots of calculators. So there's lots of calculators, charts. We try to give out the charts. That are very informative and that give you a lot of information that you're going to need. Like this chart will tell you about your grains and what temperatures you need to add them, and your saccharification range and your resting points. There's lots of charts about how much sugars you need to add or how much sugars are in each of the fruits. So we've got lots of different charts. Here's a chart that you were looking at a minute ago, specific gravity, and this is your triple scale. So this tells you how much from the very top to the bottom, the range of gravity, the range of potential alcohol, and the Breeks. Um, so that's lots of charts that you need to read and have and keep on hand that can help. There's some calculators online where you can plug in your starting gravity and it can tell you what your potential is, or you can type in the grains and what malt you plan on using. It can tell you how much malt you need for the diastatic powers, and there's ways to calculate that manually and with the calculators. So lots of online sources for lots of good information. And now that you subscribe to them, you'll get a notification when we come on. So it'll send a little bell ding to your phone. Oh, it's Tuesday. Let's go catch them. It's time to learn. So it's a lot of fun. We'll sit around and talk and bullshit. If we got some people asking questions, we'll ask them. But we try to keep it on topic. So unlike a lot of things these days, you can't make a comment in anything without it becoming political or getting all that involved. And we try to eliminate all that here. We try not to get involved in any of that because people need an escape from that. Because it's just in everything. You can't bring up a topic and then all of a sudden somebody's just, either pro or against and just bringing in a lot of hate and all that. So, yeah. So you use the xylitol too? Yeah, that's what I use. And it's used a lot in the gum. I didn't know it, but it's in the chewing gums a lot. I didn't remember that, but after I started doing some research on it, after I got it, um, xylitol, monk fruit, cool. Dougie, I bet it is pretty. I don't know, man. I don't know, man. That was out there, wasn't it? I'm telling you, man. I don't know. I think he's looking through a different window than I am. Well, I didn't delete it, so you can scroll back and look at it. I don't know. It sounded like something that the rabbit would say. It was Janet Joplin or something was saying about some window pane or something. I don't know. It's kind of out there, man. Yeah, I know. It is. There's so many people, man. That's just, and a lot of them too. For me, I get humor out of a lot of it. So I can laugh at a lot of things, but yeah, certain things we just have to, we have to delete. It's a little bit different, tangent pinch and Vulcan pinch, but yeah, it's the pinch family. But yeah, we try to get past it, especially with the politics. I don't want anybody mad at me. I have my specific mindset, and everybody has their mindset. I'm not going to change anybody's minds, no matter if I talk to them blue in the face, and they're not going to change mine. So why even bother? It's just you just get people mad at you. Half people think one way, half people think the other way, and why would you want one half getting mad at you talking about something they don't even want to hear anyhow? Yep, that's why we're here, brother. And it's there's not a lot of places that you can come ask and get the experience that you're getting here. With me and Clint and some of the others that are here. I don't know where Scott is tonight. He's been slacking. But yeah, we got a lot of people here with a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and it's a lot of fun hanging out, chatting, and talking. And you don't get that everywhere these days. People get too worked up over shit. And let they get off topic. Let's just say that way. Yeah, I got you. Sounds good, man. Well, I mean, if you can ferment inside, 70 degrees. If you keep your house in the 70-degree range, that's perfect for a wine or for a brandy. So if you want to start with some fruit, which can be expensive, so uh, if you got apple trees, peach trees, if you're young, I can't recommend enough planting some fruit trees everywhere. If you got property, family got property, cousins with property, even if you got public land, you can sneak on and find a specific spot with an opening and plant some damn fruit trees and just remember where it's at and come back and you know what are they going to say? But I was talking to somebody today. I really think that with all the national parks and all the national forests and all the places that we have like that, from local to state to national, we really should have a lot more fruit trees planted, and a lot more blackberry bushes growing. And we should spend, it wouldn't cost much, to have volunteers go out and plant these and graft and clone it, propagate. It'd be a great thing to do like Johnny Appleseed, just plant hundreds and hundreds of apple trees and peach trees and plums and in their ranges, in areas that they'll work. Yeah, I love me some too. There's Scott chimed in here, just snuck right in talking about plums. See why he did that? Just kind of snuck in. Yeah, I love me some plum brandy. Slivovitch is what they call it in um, Western Europe, Eastern Europe. Slivovitch. Yep, Scott's been slacking. He's tardy. How's it going, Elvin? That's right, brother. No drama, no bullshit. Just, we'll sit down and talk and chat about certain things, but we try to keep that shit out, man. There's too much of it. It's just like every little thing, every comment, every news channel, everything, no matter what it's about, they talk about the weather, and the next thing you know, there's people arguing about politics, and I'm just not going to allow it. I'm going to keep it out of here like it's a plague. Yeah, yep. I know. A friend had a nephew just passed away from burns from doing this, and um, it can be quite dangerous. You have to be very careful what you do. And we had one of our regulars just got injured doing it. So that's why we, preach, 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 and you can't, safety is a major factor, and that's what we try to promote the most. And you got to be aware, and there's certain things that you can do to make it safer. Here's a prime example. Back in the old days, I never thought much about making sure that my worm was clear. Right now, you can make all the jokes you want about that, but that my worm was clean, right? And it was on my pressure cooker, and I kept it hidden outside. I was young and hiding it from the parents, and I had my little copper coil. I think it was like a 3/8 coming off that pressure cooker. It's small. Um, and I never thought much about it. And one time I did a run, and I was like, man, we should be dripping by now. Nothing, nothing, nothing. And come to find out, mud daubers have gotten into my worm and had clogged it up with mud. And that son bitch was building pressure, and that steel was puking and coughing and spitting, and it never done that before, and it was like, damn. And I turned it off, and sure enough, the worm was clogged up. If I'd let it go much more, it'd have been a bomb. It'd have been covered us in boiling, boiling water. It may not have exploded, but we were using the fire, so it could have gotten quite dangerous. And just simple mud daubers have clogged up my worm, and so we had to clean it out. And then after that, wasn't a big problem. But they'd gotten in there and they made them a big old bunch of dirt, and it, little things like that. So after that, I learned to, if you're using a worm, you've been sitting out in a utility building, blow through it, make sure there ain't no mud daubers clogged it up on you, because just little things like that. Yeah, I like talking to Amanda. Yep, her and Jay both. Yeah, she's very knowledgeable. Yeah, yeah, her and Alan Both are very knowledgeable people, and enjoy talking with both of them a lot. I want to get her on here, but and she and Jay are friends of mine. So, uh, but yeah, she's so busy. I hate to impose. I don't ask her. I don't want to. You know, I just know how busy she is, and I'm just glad that her and Wayne are doing that. And if she wants to be on, I know she'll probably listen to this, pick it up. If you want to jump on here, I'd love to have you. But I know that you're busy, and I know you're shy, and I know it takes you all day to get your nerves and built up and do it. But we're pretty relaxed. So if you definitely, if you want to, let me know. We'd love to have you in here, just handling little one-on-one questions. Dealing and talk a little bit about what you got going on. And she does classwork. So, she does some very comprehensive classwork, and it's an experience, to go to her classes and to do, they start with a mash, and they'll build a mash, and then they'll ferment a mash that's already been doing. And so they get to do hands-on, and go through the process. They cook out. It's an experience, I definitely want to do it with Ann one of these days. It's kind of on my bucket list. Love to do that, and go and spend some time with them, and hang out, and learn, and sip a little bit, sit around the campfire and talk. We get to do a little bit of that. But yeah, they're awesome people. Amanda and Jay both are. Beard and Board and Jesse, yeah, they're good. Yeah, both of those definitely. I like listening to Osiris too. He does a lot of off the grid stuff. I'm into that stuff as well. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of other stuff that I like to deal and talk about. Canning. There's a lot of fermenting foods. We maybe we could do a show on fermented foods and get somebody on here that's really big on fermenting foods, and because there's a lot of knowledge, to fermenting your foods for, shit it's a fan, being able to survive in tough times. You never know. World these days, it's just you never know, what one day will bring, whether it's a national disaster or a war, or you never know what uprisal. I do know in the past, some really bad winters, or some bad floods, and all of a sudden you're not getting any goods in for 2 or 3 weeks. The store shelves are empty. What are you going to do? You don't have any vegetables canned. You don't have any things put up. You didn't prepare. You're not prepared for things like that. You need to always have every person in America needs to have at least 2 weeks of food and water. Now, I'm not saying steak and potatoes, but something that you can eat and you can sustain yourself for at least 2 or 3 weeks. Definitely should have that. And you should also have you a water distiller, right? So you can distill that water for fresh, clean drinking water, right? And you can make your own hand sanitizer if you know what you're doing. Yeah, it's got crazy, man. Yeah, everything's hyper political. Everything's all about politics. You can't talk about popping popcorn and putting butter on it without somebody getting political. It's crazy. That's why we don't. I keep it out of here. I try to avoid it like the plague. I don't want to go there. Everybody's got their opinions on it. Doesn't do no good to talk about it. You're not going to change anybody's mind. I never quit, but I sure had thoughts about it, especially when they started censorship. You know, I don't care which side you're on. You have a freedom of choice, and it's freedom of speech, and to choose and speak as you wish, as long as it's not putting anybody else in jeopardy. And I'll fight for that right, regardless of whether you're preaching what I believe or what I don't. Moose bone. Damn, I need to see if I won that copper coon picker. There was two of us that were in the finals to win. I don't know if me and Tim either one. I guess Tim might have won. I ain't heard back from Chris. So I reckon that Tim must have won. I need to check my Facebook messages though. See. So that was nice. That's as close as I come to winning something in a long time. I never win nothing. Yeah, hell, them mud daubers sure as hell did, man. It was crazy. Yeah, everybody, there's a time and a place for everything, and we've talked about doing the political thing, and really, I think there are enough people out there with enough level heads that are making an argument for both sides, and if they don't listen to the logic that they're preaching, they ain't gonna listen to mine either. So one way or the other. And I'm not gonna convince anybody that of one way. Everybody's got their beliefs, and they're going to pretty much stick to them. I've never talked to somebody and explained something logically, and they're like, well, you're right. I think I'm going to change my party. I mean, that just doesn't happen, right? So all you do is end up pissing people off, and that old bad Santa, and just, no, heck no. So I keep politics and religion and all that, I keep it out, And they wanted to do a show about it, and I was like, yeah, that'd be good. We get in the show, and but still, people watch that show, and they'd be like, I never knew he was that, way or one way or the other. So, I'm not gonna watch him anymore because then they get butt hurt, So I don't want to, they can get that for somebody else, I have my beliefs, and I don't think I'm going to change anybody's opinions. I just enjoy coming in and hanging out with everybody and getting away from it all, really, because it's in everywhere you go. So I think it's great that we can all come together, and I know we all have different beliefs. I know there's, beliefs from both sides in here, and that's fine. But that don't make your liquor any better or worse, So that's what we're talking about, and I think it's best that way, and there's not a lot of places of refuge that you can just get away from it. And that's what I want this to be, is a place where we can just kind of get away from it and have a few sips and get along, because it's tough enough. Used to people could have a different opinion, and they'd say, well, this is what I think. Well, this is what I think. Well, okay, well, I guess we can agree to disagree. And, hey, have a beer and forget about it and be jovial. No, not today. If you don't believe like I believe, then I'm canceling you. I'm unfriending you. And it's like, man, I've had family and friends unfriend me that were lifetime friends, and because I had a certain political view, and it's just gotten crazy, man. It's just silly. Yeah, we do like canning and jam and jelly making. But I tell you what, don't ever try to use those old jams and jellies in a future brandy. Man, that's one of the few fermentations I've ever thrown out. Man, I thought, well, I was going on vacation. In my defense, I was going on vacation during most of the primary fermentation, and when I came back home, I opened that thing up, and it was more colors than the jam that went in it. I had white grape, green grape, and uh, red grape, we had strawberry, all of it went in there. And I tell you what, the mold and the colors on that was more colors than went in it. And it just opened up that lid and the spores just hit me. I inhaled them and oh God, I was coughing and it was the worst. It was one of the few, and it did have bad mold, bad mold. I don't even recommend trying that. It was horrible, horrible. Yeah, it goes by quick, man, especially once you have a few. Yeah, I ain't got no time for that. It's plenty of time and all them other groups. If you want, there's plenty of groups out there to go argue with it about, and you know, certain things that I find strange are, and this isn't getting political one way or the other, but each party 10 years ago had certain views. And all of a sudden they've left those certain views and gone and they believe something else now. And you can watch the very same politicians talking against something or for something 10 years and 20 years ago, and now all of a sudden they're for or against it. And it's like, I just watched a video of you saying just the opposite 10, 15 years ago. Now you're saying the opposite thing today just because it suits your agenda and party. And it's crazy. It's just gotten out of hand. We need to get more real people in office and less politicians in office, because they're not. Most of the politicians aren't doing what the citizens want. Yeah, I don't either. I'm one that I don't sugarcoat and I don't dance around the bush, and I cut straight to the point. And a lot of times people mistake my directness as mean spirited, and it's just that I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is what I think. This is why I think it, and a lot of times that direct line of thought, some people just don't take well to. They want you to sugarcoat it and dance around, and it's just not the way I like doing it. But anyway, yeah, I love doing. We need to get on and talk about some fermented foods. We need to find somebody that's big on food fermenting and talk about that sometime. That'd be an interesting show. And how to can and put up. Won't be Distilling 101. Maybe we'll have to name it something else and do it a different day, huh? But yeah, that's something we can do. Have a little fun. On an off day or something, maybe. But, and it's, people don't have to watch it live. There's a lot of people that don't get to catch this one live. Amanda, last night, she didn't catch it live. I caught the last probably 20 minutes of their show live and had to go back and listen to it all later, and it's the same. Most people are the same way. They got things going on and can't always listen to it live, and it's nice that you can listen to it later, and take it all in, and if you got a question, you can come back Tuesday or Saturday and ask. But yeah, I'd say probably 7 or 8% of our viewers watch it live, and the rest of the 1,000 plus, 11, 1,200, on average, they'll pick it up later. We get that many watching it, and that's just on Facebook. YouTube, who knows? It gets quite a bit more. So it shows us how many unique viewers and how many views, and it's the numbers are way up there. So it's great. Got a lot of lurkers out there, a lot of people listening, and I know they're just doing it so they can look at me and listen to my country accent. But yeah, if you do have any questions on your lurking, do jump in here and ask. You can make a fake name up for a YouTube. Log on to YouTube with a fake name, and if you're worried about people finding out who you are and don't want to use your real name, then yeah, you can use an assumed name on YouTube and come and yeah. Kimchi, yeah. But yeah, we can have some fun talking about some of that. Hell yeah, he does, because I know another buddy of mine that does the same, and he gets all kinds of stuff. So that's what you're looking for. Yeah, I got a buddy that works at a scrapyard. They get a lot of stainless and what? Way too much for the kegs, though, man. It's for the beer kegs. It's crazy. I was like, nah, man, you need to tell them I can get on Facebook Marketplace cheaper. And it takes somebody like Phil Billy and have shit welded to it, or just have him weld, have one welded up for you and buy it. That's the best way to do it, ain't JJ? It's not cheap to find somebody weld it. I've got a welder. I'm gonna start doing it. Start making some beer kegs and selling them. Just put a couple ferrules on it and mark it up and move it out. About 35, $40 on it, and it's not cheap to find somebody to weld these days. But I gotta get AC/DC welder and square wave, TIG, pulse. It's the bomb. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's even knowing that it's a modern arrowhead. I've got some nice old spear points, man. Big, old, long, nice ceremonial ones. I used to do a lot of head hunting. You got a glass microwave kiln. Very interesting. Now, explain this. I just backset JJ. Oh, you don't have him backset yet. I just use vinegar. Go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and you can get that 12% acetic acid, and that should be fine. Or just regular white vinegar. I'd say that acid blend for my wine making. That's got the citric acid, the tartaric acid, and the here's my mind. Citric, tartaric, and what's the third one? Help me out, JJ. Citric, tartaric, and man, my mind. I can't believe it. Citric, tartaric, and what? Malic. God bless. I can't remember nothing. Malic acid. My mind, man, is killing me. Yeah, that may be the stuff I'm talking about. 30%. But yeah, that's definitely going to clean it out. Yeah, I want to hear about this microwave. Malik, I can't believe I can't remember that. Man, getting old sucks. So the kiln goes into a microwave and can melt glass in 16 minutes. Interesting. So a microwave can melt glass, and you're heating up a crucible. Right. You got soda lime glass. You got tempered glass, plate glass, lots of different glasses. Interesting. Yeah, I've always wanted to do the glass blowing, and I've always wanted to do the ironwork too. You know, blending colors. That'd be cool, man. Yeah, I've always wanted to do the blacksmith stuff and the glass blowing and all that. That's what Eric Ayers, the other admin on the DIY Shine and Steel building, he's into blacksmithing now. He's doing a lot of stuff. So it's like a crucible you're heating up in the microwave. Yeah, there's lots of different glasses. Yeah, I've got some of that old carnival glass. Actually, glass is a liquid. A lot of people don't realize that, but scientifically, glass is a liquid. And like the glass that is on our windows, that technically is a liquid. And people are like, oh, that's crazy. In our jars, it's a liquid. Technically, scientifically, it's a liquid, not a solid. It's a shatterable liquid. But it's so the atoms are moving so slowly that it takes decades and centuries. But if you look at old glass that's like a century or older, it's thicker at the bottom than the top because it's constantly being pulled down by gravity and it slowly moves. So if you look at some really old windows, the glass is thicker at the bottom than it is the top. Same with the jars. And also it will develop air bubbles in it over time. So scientifically, glass is a liquid. That's crazy, isn't it? That is crazy. But yeah, so over if you look in some windows from the 18, 17, and 1800s, put your micrometer on the bottom and the top, and you can see that the bottoms is going to be a lot thicker than the top. That's insane, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. All right, with that little tidbit, that little scientific fact, we'll take us a little shot and wrap it up. It's been a great Saturday. Had a lot of fun. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for the beginners that are coming in asking your questions. And look forward to your son coming in. Congratulations on the wedding, and hope he gets that Bever football. And when he wants to learn about mash making and getting ready for that first mash, tend to bring it in here, and we can help him out and get him set up and teach him about how to convert grains into fermentable sugars. It's a lot of fun, and it's not hard. It sounds very difficult and all, but just gotta have the right equipment and the right tools, I guess, and the right ingredients, and we can definitely put you on the right path for those. Flake scars reflect sine wave patterns. Now listen to that kind of talk, man. You know, his group's talking about some science in their glass work. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah, we got a lot more going on. This ain't just a hat rack, right? But anyway, thanks y'all for tuning in. We will see you Tuesday. Let's see what day that's going to be. Also, we do have this next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, the 27th and 28th, the Louisiana Moonshine Festival. I think that's in Leesville, Louisiana. And that is this coming weekend. I thought I dropped that damn thing. Lord have mercy. Let me pull that information up. Yes. Leesville, Louisiana, March 27th and 28th. Should be a good time for anybody down in that area. It's in the Vernon Parish Fairgrounds. It's their second annual festival. We got some from the militia going to be there. And should be a good time for all those down in that area. I wish I could go, but it's tough for me to go to them when they're that far away. If it's close to an airport, I might be able to do it, but it's tough for me to fly in, rent a car, and drive and do all that. I'm getting old. It's hard for me to drive a lot. If I could just fly in and be there, it would be pretty good. Rent a car and just go and come back. But it's hard for me to drive, 10, 12 hours anymore. I'm getting narcoleptic. I fall asleep at the wheel a lot, and it's just not very good to drive. But 2-day pass is just $20. Probably a good time. I think you might have to do that online before you go. But again, Louisiana Moonshine Festival in Leesville, Louisiana this weekend, March 27th and 28th. If you're in the area, definitely want to check that out. Be some good times, some good people down there. We've got a lot of friends down there. I think we definitely got some militia people going to be there. I know Wayne's going to be there from Mozark, so he's right next door. So yeah, he'll definitely be there. I think Damon's going to try to make it down. He said last night he might not be able to, so I don't know. But should be a good time for those that are in that area. Great place to go meet some of the people and share a sip and talk shop. So we'll see you before that, though, Tuesday the 24th, and I need to get working on my taxes. So in the meantime, everybody have a great weekend, what's left of it, and we will catch you all later. Till then, shine on, peace out, love y'all, shine on.